All right, so according to this, we are live, and as you can see, for whatever reason, I'm alone here tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. I don't want to make everyone wait. Try to keep things more or less on schedule. I have some things I can talk about because initially here, I just wanted to share what has happened in the last 2 weeks. If anyone watched the previous Hangout, you'll know that I was going to try to reach out to a few different places in my community. So I do have some things to report on that front. I have a couple actually really cool prints I can share with everyone to pass a little bit of time. And I do know at least 2 people are going to get here a little bit late. So hopefully we'll get a few people trickling in. I'm sure we will. So we'll see how things go. Send out the link. Oh, I did send out the link. Zadim, I guess it's kind of a pain to send it out to everybody individually on Twitter, but I guess if that's what we have to do, I'll try to work on that here. It is in the Google Hangout group if you're on there. I actually don't know how Matthew sends it out to everybody, but hang in there. It should be propagating to everybody before too long here. But anyway, like I said, I do have a little bit of information to share on what happened in the last 2 weeks. I posted a relatively short video that kind of covered going to the library and stuff. I wanted to go to my local library and reach out to them. I did do that. If anyone's interested in seeing it, I just went ahead and took my camera with me and sort of shot a little piece before I went in and then recapped what happened when I came out. But for anyone who hasn't seen that, I will update you. Last Friday, we actually didn't talk about it until very, very late in the stream. I think it was at like the 2-hour mark. I will update this video. I don't think I put it in the description, but it will be linked in the description to kind of like the exact point in the previous Hangout where we talked about it. But we were talking about reaching out to our local communities and trying to be advocates or ambassadors or whatever term suits you best to 3D printing technology with the hopes of getting other people involved, trying to help educate other people in the technology and just letting people see how great it is and how much opportunity there is there. Looks like we do have somebody here. Vicky has joined us.
Yeah,
so hello,
hi.
Vicky.
Hi,
so I'm not totally alone here.
No. Which this is totally not a reflection of people's interest in community outreach. I think it's just that we're all quite busy.
It just happened to fall in this week that everybody's schedules were a little chaotic, I guess, nice way of putting it. But yeah, I'll make this brief because I'm sure we'll discuss some of it at some point here. So I went to my local library. I'm incredibly impulsive, so I just showed up. I didn't call ahead. I didn't make an appointment. Depending on the size of your town, that might be a good idea. Like if you live in a metropolitan area, you might want to call and make an appointment. But I live in a relatively small town, so I just stopped in, was trying to touch base, make some initial contact and stuff. And it just so happened that the first person I walked up to, and like literally the first person, was the director of the library. And I introduced myself. I said that I was interested in talking to someone about doing some demonstrations or short educational courses or just anything they're willing to do basically with 3D printing technology. I had my own printers I was willing to bring. And her face lit up immediately, and she took me upstairs in the library, and it is a very small space, but they have an area set aside that they are dedicating to a very compact maker space. And like their plans, and it is a very small space. It's actually like my workshop is relatively small, and it's small even in comparison to that. I would say it's probably about a 10 by 15 area. So with a table and stuff in there, it's very, very compact. But they had actually just received their printer. I did put a picture of it in the video that I referenced. It's the last upload on my channel. It's a Sindo P200 or something like that. It's an enclosed unit that uses self-loading filament cartridges. It's like a spool inside of a proprietary cartridge, and it's kind of a cool system, and it seems to be a very good printer. I did a little bit of looking on it, and it seems to be something that most people are happy with. It almost strikes you as like if Apple designed a printer, theirs would be something like this. It's very, very much geared to like an everyday end user. So I think they made a good call on that front, which is surprising and a relief. As soon as they said they bought a printer, I was like, oh no, because she was very upfront about the fact that she knew nothing about 3D printing. So I think they lucked out. Well, I shouldn't say lucked out there. That's selling Lori short. I think she made a good call there. But I've actually never seen a machine like that. You actually just take the cartridge, put it in, and it actually loads itself. It actually pulls the filament out, primes the extruder, everything. It's all automated, which is kind of cool. But she was very excited. I was obviously very excited right off the bat. And I guess that's what we're kind of here to talk about tonight is some of what I've learned. That's that's the country coming out in me. But some of what I've learned and some of the things that I and maybe some of the others here have identified as things that we need to maybe learn more about ourselves and be prepared to deal with when we're trying to do some outreach and stuff. Because one of the things that struck me immediately when they said they had bought a machine was I wish I was a little better educated, as far as what types of machines, like say they hadn't gotten a machine yet, like I don't really know what I would have recommended to them, because there's some really, I don't say expensive, but there's some $2,000+ machines that I think are suitable for, an educational facility like that. But I have no experience with them. I've never talked to any companies about, the suitability of their various products for places like that, for people who might not be very familiar with the technology. And the last thing any of us wants to do is get someone on board and then hook them up with a machine that they end up like having problems with or end up regretting, or, it's a struggle. So I think that's something worth discussing. And I personally plan on reaching out to some companies and seeing what they recommend. If someone would come to them and just have a certain set of requirements that a library like the one near my town has, like what they would recommend. You'd recommend the CR10. See, there's a lot of great printers that I think a lot of us who are a little tech savvy would be fine with. But then when you take like the staff of the library in my town, like nobody knows anything about 3D printing, and it's not, an insult or something bad about them. They just don't have any familiarity with it. So I think that's something definitely to consider. And also cost. In a small town like mine, they do not have a large budget, and it's a good thing that they don't ever intend to charge anyone to use any of this equipment, but it's also a little bit limiting too, because this is going to have to sustain itself on a very tight budget, and they're going to allow people to come in and print things with, with some oversight, but they're never going to charge anybody to use this stuff. So
our library is taking an interesting tack on that. That is, the local library group has a mobile makerspace that they're taking from library to library. So not one library has to foot the bill for the whole thing.
Yeah. And we'll take a moment here, because I did start alone and we've had some people trickle in. So if everyone wants to take a minute to introduce themselves, we can go ahead and do that. Like if you want to start, Vicky, do a brief introduction, catch you off guard here.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Vicky Soma. I'm from the YouTube channel Tigaw3D. Little sparsely updated lately, and it's probably going to be a few more weeks before I get a video out. I have some big 3D printing projects looming that is eating up my time. Introduction on outreach. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, so we actually have a lot of schools that already have 3D printers here. So that's a very good use case or, you know, inspiration so you guys know that it can be done. I work closely with a library system here. I do all day Tinkercad and 3D printing trainings for them at a makerspace that's hosted by Virginia Tech and UVA. They have a Northern Virginia campus. So those librarians get a whole day where they're working on design, and then they do their prints, and they get to take home their prints, and then they go back to their branches and they teach classes and they help empower the public to get involved with 3D printing. It's very much what Richard was just talking about. They have 3D printers that will travel from branch to branch for events. And other kinds of outreach that I've done before is just simply bringing 3D printing along with our other hobbies and our interests. My husband had a Take Your Daughters to Work day, so we brought a printer there and we printed all the girls. I think it was 44 names of 44 girls for them to take their names home. I'm a programmer, and I do programming classes for girls. And so that's another thing where I'm like, oh, you want to talk about what's made with code? I made these things out of code. You know, here's some prints for you. And then, you know, low key is just being visible, where I'll go to craft shows and maybe I'll have my 3D printer out there, or I'll have some of my objects there just to show people like, hey, this 3D printing's out there. Hopefully someone sees the things that I do and they think I can do that, or maybe they even think I can do that better. So just trying to be visible.
Cool. Out of curiosity, what's the printer sitting there on your right? I guess it would be to your left.
That one? This
Yeah,
one right here? This one's my baby. This is my Maker Gear M2. My family surprised me for it for my birthday. So I started 3D modeling and printing, and I printed for a year through Shapeways. And yeah, I probably would have dilly-dallied forever because, you know, like what you're talking about, it's an intimidating decision. Which one of the printers do you buy? What do you need? What's going to be easy to maintain? What's going to, you know, be something that the libraries are going to keep using? And so I could have dilly-dallied on that decision forever. My family referenced 3D hubs, and then they like surprised me on my birthday. And yeah, I love it. I love my other printer too, but this one's my baby.
See, I think most of us here recognize the printer over your other shoulder there, the old Wanhao Duplicator i3, which unfortunately I have to upload a video about that soon, but you're sitting there with yours.
Yeah.
I'm not. But no, thanks. Yeah, so there's Vicky. Richard, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Richard Murray. My channel is Zadim, and my focus is normally on 3D printing for model trains, but I seem to be doing more things that are not model train related. So I do have the Zadim channel, among other channels. So what do I do? For the outreach, I have been in contact with the library after our great chat 2 weeks ago. And I get to be front and center at the entrance to the library one of these upcoming Saturdays. We don't have a date yet. On this coming Friday, there I have the mobile makerspace coming in. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that entails, because I don't see much comment about it on 3D printing. But we're just approaching our big birthday bash here in Canada. Tomorrow, Canada turns 150 years old. So most places are shut down, and it's been very hard to track people down. So we'll wait until we're well in the summer. And right now, we're waiting to see how PLA stands up to things, because we're moving up to the mid 30s Celsius here. So I'm not used to that kind of heat. So it'll be fun.
And Icicle asked you, where's your co-pilot tonight?
My co-pilot tonight has been sleeping all day. So I went and poked her and said, get out of bed, we're going on air. And I got some groans. The joy of not having 9-to-5 job. She edits through the night or writes through the night. And sometimes you get up in the morning and goes, hi, I'm going to bed.
All right, thanks, Richard. And Matthew.
Hey, everybody, I'm Matt. My channel's How I Do It. As you guys are going to see, for those of you who follow my channel primarily has been 3D printing. I'm very active in the 3D printing community. But my channel is not just about 3D printing. It's also about woodworking, metalworking, electronics, and just general how I do things, which you'll be seeing here in the next two videos that I'm working on, one of which is all recorded, just needs edited. The other one I'm currently in the process of doing right now. I started out the Friday 3D printing hangouts just as on a whim. A few people joined in, and then the following week, actually it wasn't even the following week, the very next day, people were asking if we were going to be doing the stream again that following Friday, or the hangout. So that's where this kind of came from. And like Nilla has discussed here at the beginning, last week we started onto some really cool discussions about community outreach, and we all unanimously, I believe, agreed to continue that conversation into this week, before the 2-hour mark this time. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's who I am.
Cool. I got a print that just finished. I've been excited to check out. I'll have to set it aside. No, but getting back to what we were talking about, now that we do have some people that can actually have a conversation. Like I said, I did a short video that if you're interested, you can check out after this. That it's only like 10 minutes long, but I took my camera along and kind of chronicled everything that happened. And there's actually a little bit that I didn't put up that I will put up in the next few days. I stopped the library, and like I said, that went absolutely fantastically. Lori, the lady who's the director at our library, it just so happens that she's from New York. So she has, and again, nothing about anybody else at the library, but she has a slightly different mindset when it comes to, you know, pushing things like this that might not otherwise get too much attention. So it just happens to work out really great that she has kind of a different perspective coming in and being a director in a relatively small library like ours. So, and like I said, they want to have their makerspace, I think, functional by the end of June. I don't know if they're going to make that goal, but it just so happened that the timing was absolutely perfect for me to stop and make contact with them. But moving forward, and I think that's part of what we should talk about tonight. Moving forward, one of the things that you'll have to figure out is what role you're going to play. Like, say you go make contact and they're interested in starting a program or something. I think it's always good for people's roles in any kind of like project involving multiple people, for the roles to be relatively clear, like what your purpose for being there is, and like what your goals, both as a group and as individuals, are going to be to get things accomplished, instead of just like doing like I tend to do and sit around and come up with a bunch of great ideas and never make anything happen. So they're actually going to get the space, you know, assembled and functional. And a lot of it's going to be dealing with art, which is, I don't think bad. I think it's going to help them get the space started, because they will, like, I totally understand that approach of needing some more approachable things to get people in and interested, instead of just like throwing complicated things like at them if they don't have any experience with it. But I think my role moving forward is going to be to help actually get them using their machine, because they don't have anybody that has any experience at all with 3D printing. So I think in the next few weeks here, from what I understand, we're going to try to set a date and actually do some initial setup, testing, and basic training for the library staff to get them comfortable using the machine. Because eventually, like I said, they're going to allow the public to use the machine, but anyone who wants to use it's going to have to take a short kind of miniature training course, so they're competent enough to use the machine without direct supervision. So that'll be interesting, because I don't know exactly how that'll go. And I'll do videos every time anything happens to keep everyone updated, because hopefully it'll be helpful to someone. But I don't know if anyone has any input on that, because I think the initial training is important, and I think it's important that it's done right, so nobody gets turned off or intimidated, or, you know what I mean, has reservations about doing these things, like actually operating the machine on their own without someone there to help them if something would go wrong. So I think there's definitely a right and wrong way to go about that. And I'm kind of like, I'm cautiously optimistic about, you know, moving forward here. So absolutely any input from anyone either in the Hangout or chat is more than welcome.
That's how the local makerspace makes 717 here they're over in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I guess I ought to clarify that. That's how they do all their equipment. In order to use a piece of equipment, even supervised, you have to take a small, like you said, sort of a mini lesson. And then for a short, I believe the way they do it is for a short time period after that, depending on the piece of equipment, because they have lathes and CNC routers and 3D printers and all kinds of stuff over there, including like a laser cutter and stuff. Depending on the equipment and the personal safety level of that equipment, like the lathe and stuff requires a bit more one-on-one with the instructor, sort of guided use after you take that mini course. And then you work your way up until the instructor basically signs off on you using that piece of equipment unsupervised. Is usually the way the local makerspace does it. I think that's how a lot of them do it, but I don't know about other ones for sure.
See, my kind of tentative plan is, because I'm willing to basically do anything. I don't have a ton of money to contribute, but as far as time or effort or anything, I'm pretty much willing to do whatever it takes to get something started. So, like, I'm kind of tentatively thinking that it would be helpful to set up a separate YouTube channel that's just for the library, maybe even for internal use only initially, and do some very concise instructional videos on how to do, you know, any given thing for the printer that they happen to have, that you know, I could maybe work directly with a small handful of people at it, that, you know, that's part of the staff initially, but then give them the resources that they can actually then instruct other people. So this information can kind of like propagate internally in the library, and then they'll feel like much more comfortable trying to teach, like, you know, members of the community and stuff. So
that ties into another program our library has, is they've basically set up a YouTube creation area, and they're trying to promote that. And so, you know, we tie in on both sides, but they're looking for people to produce things right at the library so they can show how it's done. And doing training videos for their other equipment falls right into that. And it pushes it beyond the people just want to do 3D printing, be more the people that want to do YouTube work. Okay, here's a project. Let's walk through how it's done.
I think that's great. I mean, every community has people that, you know, has worthwhile information that could be shared. And I think, man, YouTube is like one of the most powerful platforms. I mean, it sounds a little hyperbolic, but it's one of the most powerful platforms like humanity has ever had access to as far as like sharing information. So I think the more people that know how to use it, like, the better off we all are. Tony in chat, I don't know if you saw that, Vicky. Tony in chat asked if you have any outlines or lesson plans that you either used or have access to that you'd be willing to share or give some insight.
I do. I have them up on SlideShare. So I've done an OpenSCAD class, and that wasn't as, I don't know, as popular as Tinkercad, but then I also have my Tinkercad slides. Do I have mod privileges yet? I'll go ahead and grab those links and throw them in the chat.
I don't know if you do. Can you type a message in chat and I'll make sure that you have it? I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, no, sure.
There you go. Yeah, you do have it. All right.
Okay.
We're on top of things here.
Actually, that's interesting. Looking at a basic program, I sort of dived right in. I sampled everything, decided on Fusion 360, but I would like to, or I guess I'm going to have to work my way around something like Tinkercad, which I think your entry-level folks would be more interested in seeing.
I think there's a lot of advantages, and I think it's important to talk about all this stuff. I think the more equipped any of us are before we actually do. Like, I wish I knew more before I showed up at the library, but it's like you kind of have to start the ball rolling somewhere. But I think the web-based nature of Tinkercad, and someone also, I have the tab open, I didn't get a chance to look at it. SelfCAD is apparently sort of like an analog to Tinkercad, but it looks like it has a little bit more of a feature set. The web-based platforms have some advantages. Like Tinkercad, I think it's incredibly powerful to be able to maybe instruct kids or adults or anyone at the library on like a basic level, and then they can then go home and work on their designs, or even at the library on some of the computer terminals that they have, and then only maybe a small amount of their time initially is going to be spent printing. A lot of it's probably going to be like fooling around in Tinkercad or working on some designs or things, and they can do that on their own time at any computer they have access to by using their account, and then later access those files at the printer, which I think will make things a lot more accessible for a lot more people who, because it's easy to forget that some people do not have computers in their homes. There's a lot of disadvantaged people and children that would have interest in this kind of thing, and it's easy to take for granted that they might not have the same resources we have. So I think there's a lot of advantages to the web-based things that are free and you can essentially use from any PC or Mac even. I'm not sure if Tinkercad works on Mac, but I would assume it does. So I know it doesn't have the greatest feature set, and a lot of us, are sick of hearing of Tinkercad and wish people would move on to other things. But I think there's a lot of advantages that it brings when you're trying to just get people like started. So,
yeah, no, it is straightforward, especially for the younger folks that'll be trying out the system. As I said, this mobile makerspace, it's really directed towards the youth. But Tinkercad seems to have a fun layout to it, from what I looked at it. And if someone's into building Lego or into Minecraft, I don't think they would have a problem working within the Tinkercad system.
Yeah, Juan Adams said in the chat, Tinkercad will run on the Raspberry Pi. Tinkercad basically will run, I think, on pretty much any machine, minus like an Android phone or tablet. You can also run Onshape too. I've used Onshape already with my Chromebook. So if you want to do something a little bit more advanced like Fusion 360, but limited hardware, Onshape's nice because of the web-based, as long as you got a decent internet connection.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to make a list and then make an effort to see what platforms I can get to run on what devices, because again, I think it's important that we know that, because we're probably going to be interacting with people that have a pretty wide variety of resources available, and I think it's pretty obvious that we want to be as inclusive as we can conceivably be, trying to get people involved.
You guys, I have successfully, it looks like I've recruited a special guest to join us. Josh, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Ajima?
Yeah, Ajima.
Okay. Josh is from my area. He has my utmost respect and admiration. He works very heavily in education. He is a technology teacher who wanted to bring 3D printing into his schools. And I believe, if I remember correctly, he purchased it himself. So that's how passionate he was about incorporating 3D printing from the schools. Josh actually is fresh off of the International Society of Technology and Education, right? He just came from that conference in Houston where I believe he was a speaker on the maker mentality. He has forged some of the concepts that we're talking about with bringing 3D printing into education. And I thought he might be good to be here as a resource if we had questions or, like some kind of best practices and tips. So that's Josh. If I didn't describe you very well, go ahead and introduce yourself.
No, fantastic. Thank you for making that connection, Vicky. And thanks a ton, Josh, for stopping by.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a huge amount of interest in 3D printing and education, and certainly the vendors are pivoting towards education. There are 12 3D printing companies in the SD Expo Hall. So But there are also a lot of cool educational and student teacher projects on display there.
Cool. I guess. Oh, there's so many questions.
Yeah.
Do you do you want to like briefly describe maybe some of the experiences you've had, or some that might be relevant to? I don't know how much of the conversation you caught, but like I'm a complete amateur when it comes to this. Like I said, I'm as unimpressive as it sounds. I wish it sounded better, but I just basically showed up at some places at in my local area. I had a few sample prints, a few printouts with some information and stuff to contact me, and then I've been in email contact with some of the people who run. So far, it has been my local library and 2 private elementary schools, because, and you might have some experience with this, I'm afraid of how involved it might be to approach some of the public schools because of just how fundamentally different they're run. So I wanted to try to get some experience before I really approach them, because I'm afraid there might not be an infinite number of, you know, attempts available, and I don't know how much goodwill there is there. Our local area is having some issues, so they just recently made some relatively large tech investments, and they're in the process of like dealing with the funding and stuff for that. So I don't know how many resources are available to really start any new programs. That's why I want to go in as prepared as I possibly can before I really try to do that.
Yeah, it was funny. So we ended up going to the library Saturday after the stream, and 2 weeks ago, and I talked to the assistant librarians that were in. Now, the way York County's library system is, you have the main library in the city, but then you have all these satellite libraries spread throughout. And the assistant librarians that work on the weekends and most of the time at the local library, their reaction was totally positive to the 3D printing. I told them, I said, I'd just like to bring the printers in, set them up, have some pieces on display, and just sort of have a 3D printing day where people can come, ask questions, and just sort of an informational day to start out with, not really like diving into detail and stuff like that to begin with. Just sort of like a intro to 3D printing and what it is, what it can do. And they were ecstatic, which sounded great. Like the response from them was awesome. They gave me the contact information for the head librarian for the local satellite branch, and started talking to the head librarian then a few days later, and she goes, I can't buy anything from you. I don't have any money to buy stuff. I was like, no, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not even trying to sell anybody anything. I just want to come in and set up and let people come ask questions and provide resources to them, get them introduced to it, and see where it goes from there. That was kind of the approach I came. Just kind of, let's do like an introduction to it. I'll be there to answer questions and point people in the direction if they're, say they bought a printer and they're having trouble, or they're thinking about buying a printer, or they just have absolutely no clue what a 3D printer is, type of deal.
Josh, if you haven't noticed, you got to hop right in here or somebody else starts going. So we'll turn the mic over to you.
Well, like Vicki was saying, I started 3D printing in around 2013, and I said, well, I could take a grad class, and I could maybe, I wanted to improve instruction and that sort of thing. But instead, I'm going to take that money, instead of taking a grad class, I'm going to buy a 3D printer and kind of go all in on things. And so I've certainly gone to the local 3D printer meetups and kind of see how maker spaces are using 3D printing, and I've helped different schools and libraries get connected and hooked up. So I kind of hear your stories, and I understand kind of where you are on that roadmap. You want to, you love 3D printing, and you want to see that in the schools, and how do you get engaged in that process? And so certainly you know, we've seen demos as a way to engage students and be exciting. And a lot of schools will have STEM days or STEAM days, and or maker fairs or maker days, and being willing to jump in and bring your 3D printers and print items, and just have the kids engaged. This week was STEM camp for me, and you know, the kids are literally staring at the 3D printer. I actually had a kid like who had his face inside the 3D printer and was just watching it for 20 minutes, and you know, so there's that level of excitement. And so you know, having the community being able to be engaged and bring those printers into schools, that right there has value. Where I see a lot of libraries and schools right now, though, is people have gotten that excitement, and there are a lot of 3D printers in buildings. So I was at a local conference, and I must have heard about 8 times teachers saying, "Yes, we have a 3D printer. It's in a box." And so a lot of times schools have purchased the printers, but as far as training or support or any of those sorts of things, that may be a component that's missing. And that may be something where a volunteer or a member of the community could say, "Hey, where are you at in 3D printing? I would love to print you some things. If you have some manipulatives, there's a site called Thingiverse. If you want a dinosaur skull, I'd love to print you a dinosaur skull. But if you have a 3D printer and you haven't gotten engaged with that yet, I'd love to help do some training for teachers." Because really that's what I see a lot of is they, you know, they'll have some library funds at the end of the year. They'll see it in the school library journal and they'll buy a 3D printer, but they're not buying the training and support and those sorts of things. And those teachers don't know that there's a 3D printer meetup in their local community. They don't know there's a maker space in that area, and that they could come out on a Saturday and meet some people and get engaged. So some of it's just awareness, connecting the right people up in the community with the right teachers and saying, you know, here's some help and assistance that we can give. But there's also, for many teachers and librarians, it's a fear factor, and they want somebody with them to kind of help them out through those first kind of 5 or 10 prints, and get through that. I saw that. I had a kind of sort of an assistant last week helping me out with the 3D printers, and then she was my sub while I was out at the ISTE conference. And you know what? The software's getting better. The integration's getting better. I know you guys, I heard just a little bit of you talking about Tinkercad, but you know, now MakerBot announced their Tinkercad integration. Dremel's using 3D Printer OS as a back end. It's getting easier and easier to go from Tinkercad to the print itself. And so in the past, I wouldn't have been able to leave a teacher and just say, "Here, do it." But she did 55 prints through 3D Printer OS, and I saw the emails, right? It'd just be like, she's done 8 prints in the past 3 hours, just because being able to download Tinkercad on a Chromebook, upload to 3D Printer OS on a Chromebook, send to the Dremel, have that print, wipe it off the bed, do the next one, has been awesome. And she's just been able to crank out those prints. So it is getting more awesome for educators. And you know, I think sometimes there's a disconnect between the hardcore maker community, where I'm like, when I go to 3D printer meetups and I bring my Ultimaker or Dremel or PrinterBot, like, people just don't want to stop and talk and engage because it's not a Prusa i3 that I assembled myself, right? Like, they want to nerd out over, is it a 12 volt power supply or 24 volt, or, you know, what's the control board and that sort of thing. And I think educators are a little bit more interested in the products that are coming out and how do you get students to design for things. But anyways, I love this topic and I could talk for hours, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation.
No, it's fine. If you have things to contribute, by all means, take the mic and run with it. But even in the little bit of experience I've had talking to the director at my library, I instantly saw exactly what you described, where like, some of it is they bought a machine, they don't know where to go. But the thing is, they do not have access to like I'd say even competent people, or even people like willing to experiment with the technology. So I think that's more than any other thing that we can contribute as people who own our own machines and are kind of like comfortable operating them. I think that more than anything is what we're going to be able to contribute to the I don't know how you'd say it, like the outreach effort. Like I said, I think it's good to have a really good idea of what your role is going to be in your local community if you're going to be part of like the outreach. And I can see already that the biggest role I'm likely to play here initially is getting people to a basic level of understanding to operate their machine. It's like the director that I spoke to, she knew almost literally nothing about the printer. Like, she was kind of aware that there was the risk of, people maybe burning themselves, but she had no idea where. She knew there was things in the machine that got hot, but she didn't know which parts. She didn't know, like she was, I think she was primarily afraid of kids getting burnt on the heated build plate, and not really aware that the nozzle actually got significantly hotter than the build plate ever will. So I think like that, like just getting, like you said, the power, I think, is getting people, obviously in education, the power is getting people to the point where they don't need you. And I think that's going to be my goal here initially, is to get at least, even if it's only 1 or 2 people on the library staff, to the point where they feel comfortable telling other people or teaching other people how to use their machine. I think that's going to be a huge accomplishment here if we can do that in the next few weeks. Like you said, the software being streamlined, and just the general effort of companies pushing in the direction of education. And I think they have a pretty obvious self-interest to do that, because I think the sustainability of the income from educational facilities is probably larger than trying to cater, perpetually to the consumer market. So they do have some incentive, luckily, and luckily it all works out for everybody that is the case. But no, I'm definitely interested in, because I think some people in chat have already mentioned some places that have like educational programs for 3D printing. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the next few weeks trying to basically go through all those programs and see what their approaches are, and the steps that they tend to take to familiarize people with the printers and the software and stuff. But do you personally use like Tinkercad, or are there other software options that you think are better?
Well, if you're talking to me, I use Tinkercad for 95% of my design work. I've been featured on Thingiverse a couple of times with stuff that I've done in Tinkercad. When I need to do a little bit more pro level stuff, I'll do my 2D designs for SVGs in Illustrator using original or source material from maps and things like that. And then the only thing that I've really had trouble with was this is the Friendship 7 capsule, this one Formlabs top educational model, where I have the Hidden Figures ladies engraved on the inside as a lithophane. This one I had to use Mesh Mixer. So, but I tend to use tools that are use and model tools that are free, or easy entry points for teachers. And so for me, that's usually Tinkercad, and then Mesh Mixer, NetFab, and maybe Fusion 360, because again, there's free academic licenses. So I think when you're talking to librarians and educators, you do have to listen for the misconceptions they have. So they do have some misconceptions. They think, oh, it's bad for your health, right? And it's toxic to kids. And we know that if you use PLA and you have good ventilation, that you're great. But there's still those misconceptions that there's health hazards associated with 3D printing. There's misconceptions about how much material waste it is. Oh, isn't it bad for the environment? We're like, well, the average American produces like 5 pounds of garbage, and the initial 3D prints that kids are doing are like 5 grams of material. So, the balance of that isn't so bad. I think the one thing that I see for community folks who are interested in talking to educators is find some good models to print. Please don't always just be showing like Pokemon and Yodas and things like that. You need to dig in a little bit and find, you know, some, like, here's the little hurricane model, you know, there's 3D math stuff, here's the Statue of Liberty. So you kind of have to know your audience, who you're talking to, and then put some thought into having a good set of models so that it can kind of engage the educators on, like, oh, this is how I'd use it in the classroom. Like, if you're going into an elementary school, you want elementary school level manipulatives, but if you're going to high school, you want something maybe calculus related, or, you know, if you have kids in the school, look at the types of things that they're studying or bringing home, and maybe try to find something to that's related to that, to 3D print. I think the other thing that's a kind of a difficulty is all the 3D printer companies are saying, oh, we have curriculum, right? And they have lesson plans and things like that, but they don't really understand what teachers need. No teachers out there are teaching 3D printing, right? So lessons about 3D printing you need to find the connection to what the teachers are actually teaching and talking about. And, you know, these little lessons that that these different companies are writing, like make a car in Tinkercad, seem really exciting to those companies that are creating them. But again, it's not something that the average teacher is doing. So a good part of the thing that you want to do is you're the expert on 3D printing, but they're the experts on content, and you kind of want to meet them in the middle. Hey, is there a thing that you've always wanted? Let's say a topographic map of Virginia that shows the regions of Virginia, right? Maybe, hey, I could help you design that, right? Maybe we
could just got Vicky excited.
I've got it. I have this hanging on my wall, Josh. This came from him, the model. But I love our home state. So, I mean, it's not the best print. It was when I was first learning wood fill, but I love the model.
So I think that can be a great start for community people who want to really engage with editors or educators is, hey, is there a project that you're excited about? I can help you, like, let's work together to model that. Like, do you have any handouts or source materials that you can give to kids, that we can dimensionalize, that we can make 3D and make it more exciting and more interesting for the kids? Maybe you find something on Thingiverse, but if you're helping them create something new, then you can walk them through that process. They can give you the content area and you can kind of tweak and iterate. And then I think there's a lot of value to engaging that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're absolutely right. That's why I tried to. I took a variety of sample prints in. I've recently been printing a bunch of lithophanes, and I got to say I got them pretty dialed in. I'm like so excited every time I look at them.
He did his first Benchy without ever downloading the STL.
I've never printed a Benchy, and then my first actual Benchy. Well, I know you can't see that at all, but my first Benchy was a lithophane. Because people kept giving me a hard time about never printing one, so I printed one. But one of the things, I don't know your thoughts on this, Josh, but I finally just got all the applications and stuff done, and I need to actually start printing my first prosthetic. But the Enable program, I don't know if you're familiar with that, with providing prosthetics primarily to children and stuff. That was something that I always thought would be fantastic for getting community support, because I don't know. That's one of those things I've wanted to participate in since the day I got my printer. And I know just a few people in the community, I mean, my local community, that I've mentioned that to. As soon as you describe it to people and like what exactly is involved, like they just immediately want to participate. Like, I don't know your thoughts on that, because I'm going to be printing a couple different designs here, because I don't have many printers, but I have 3. Should have a Wanhao here in the near future if all goes well. But like, I kind of planned on having one of my i3s basically printing that sort of thing all the time, if possible.
Yeah, the Enable community and that is. I'm confused on the status of that at the moment. I helped organize the Construct 3D Education Conference at Duke University. And so apparently part of the story is that some of the community that's making prosthetics do not really think that the impact of consumer level 3D printing and home users making these prosthetics has had as much value for the actual end users as it has as far as just general interest. Like it's generated a lot of interest, but apparently there's a big schism in the prosthetic printing community about which way they should go, as far as should you just let Joe Schmo kind of engineer and tweak these sorts of things, or does it need to be a team of specialists who are kind of working with users to create things that are functional? And so I'm confused just on the status of, like, it seems like consumer level 3D prints of prosthetics have been helpful to kids, right, and to people. But is there a group that's saying that that's doing more harm than good? And so, again, that's confusing. But I think prosthetics are a great way to show people the impact of being able to do 3D printing in terms of service learning. But then I think for the local community, kids need to be thinking about what are the issues that people in my school are having? What are the issues of what are the needs in my actual community? And so I think what happens is sometimes we get so focused on the prosthetics, we don't think about the things that the lower threshold things that we can do in our communities, like, gripper adapters for the old age home that's down the street, or the fact that all the soap dispensers in every building are way too high for elementary kids or small kids to actually reach and have access to. Or is there like a camera mount or adapter that you could have for a student who has limited mobility in their hands, some sort of adapter to use a pen or a marker or a camera or something like that? That there's lots of these problems within the building itself that don't go quite as far as a full-on prosthetic. And so having kids brainstorm and design and create a variety of different solutions that they can implement in the building, I think is very exciting. And using prosthetics as, hey, that's kind of the apex of this concept is super cool.
See, your response there is exactly why we need to have community conversations like this, because I never thought of that and agree 1,000%. That's true of anything. Like, the extreme is always going to apply to the smallest number of people. And then there's like a bell curve with almost everything in life. And like, the less extreme your accessibility issues or your usability issues are, the more people that's going to affect. So I think like even if you do use the enable program to get initial interest, I think that is a fantastic and incredibly valuable conversation to have with kids. It's like, there's, like you just described, there's a child who needs an entire hand. Like, what about Jimmy down the street who has his hand, but has some kind of condition or injury or something that limits the use of it, and he doesn't need a prosthetic? But it kind of made me laugh, because one of the first things I 3D printed with my printer, again, laid out in Tinkercad, I pick locks as a hobby. Like, I'm into lock sport, and my grandmother has always been totally interested in it. And she had a stroke at one point and has like limited strength in her hand. So I made her big old handles for the lock picks that I bought her, and now she sits and picks locks and stuff because she can actually hold the picks. So yeah, it's easy to forget, because it seems so mundane. Like, things like that seem so mundane in comparison to like a full-on prosthetic, that it is understandable that even I kind of like drop the ball thinking about that stuff. But I think you make a fantastic point.
I don't have one on hand, but I have these pen rings. And so it's a ring that fits over your finger. A pen will hold it, so when you can't grip a pen, it holds it. And just having that with me when I talk to 3D printing to folks, I get a lot of comments of, oh, I can use one, or my aunt can use one, my mother can use one, what have you. So, and that's something that would be great for a school, because it's a print that's under an hour. It's maybe a 45-minute print with the settings I'm using right now. But exactly that, the types of things that can be used right in the classroom or right in the library or for the users right there. We see that holy grail, as mentioned, of let's make the arm, the hand, what have you. But looking around, seeing what can be made and what people can pick up and use immediately. The seniors, they're right into the pen ring. And when I mentioned I've seen designs for spoon holders, that got excitement there too. And that brings in another whole group of people, because they're going, you can actually do this, because we focus a lot into the schools and the youth, but that's one small part of our population. How do you bring the rest of the community into it? You know, when you're at the library has a very active seniors program. So what sort of projects can be used for those seniors to get them interested in using this equipment and this hobby, grasp it and run with it?
So if you're talking to your school, just a few buzzwords or a way to approach it is, I'm in a large school system and we have an assistive technology department. So they work with students with disabilities. And we also have teachers for the visually impaired. So depending on the size of the school district, you may or may not have specialists who work on those sorts of things. But that also may be an approach. Hey, is there an assistive technology person? I'd love to 3D print you adapters or things like that. Oh, is there a teacher for the visually impaired? I'd love to kind of create some, print some classroom models for you and talk about your needs, and then get you self-sufficient on kind of printing and creating your own items.
All right. Is there any questions in chat or anything else that anyone thinks that we should talk about here? Because I know some of this, it's a lot to take in, especially for me. Like, there's so many things to consider. Like, I already feel like, just in the, I don't know how long we've been going here, but I already feel like I could step away and I have plenty to think about and formulate a plan moving forward here. But yeah, are there any issues or concerns that anyone wants to address?
I'm looking forward to getting the feedback once I'm actually in the library and seeing, you know, I've preconceived ideas of what will happen and see what the reality turns out to be, to see what people are really focused on. I've been around town quite a bit in the last little while, and I just have my 3D printed frogs and, you know, carry them, and people are looking at them. For most of them, it's the first time they've seen a 3D print. Forget the printer, that's just a print. So especially when two of these are made out of cedar filament. So you mentioned wood filament. How does that work in the particles? We're a lumbering community here. So when people are just seeing that, they're trying to make the connection between the trees coming down out of the mountains and coming out as a frog from a printer, and what the whole process is, making that link. So I think it'll be quite interesting to see what the first event will be like.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what the actual, the first actual event that we end up doing will consist of. Like, I think most of us, like, I'm definitely, I have no issue dragging my printers around and doing some outreach that way. And I'm hoping maybe we do that initially. I think there's a lot involved. I wouldn't be surprised if their timelines don't exactly play out like they might hope them to. So I'm kind of tentatively planning on doing something like that at some point for some initial outreach, to maybe get some, maybe as they're finishing up their little makerspace, like try to whip up some interest beforehand, so that people are kind of psyched for them to actually, you know, officially open it, and they might have like a crowd of people there initially, which would be kind of cool. Because I think word will spread pretty quick in our little town that there's something like this going on.
I think I mentioned it before, but in our community, so far I've counted 12 different printers out in the area. Now, one of those is a commercial operation. Found out they've won awards for their work they've done for museums around the world, that sort of thing. But for the rest of them, it sounds like very few are actually being used for anything. And so there's a lot of people, as mentioned with the teachers, who might say, yes, we have a 3D printer. It's in the box over there. The one organization deal with, they got a printer. They even built a building to put it in because they're printing ABS, didn't like the smell, but it hasn't been turned on in the last 6 months. So how to get past that barrier, get people going, hey, you can actually build useful things here. And it's going to change the way you're doing things. I found it quite interesting. Today, I'm looking for a new vehicle, so I was at the Ford dealer. And while we were waiting around, the parts person came over, we started chatting, and I mentioned that I think it's either the 2018 or 2019 Ford, one of their truck lines, the manifold, the production line will be 3D printed manifolds. So mentioning to them that, look at your parts department. It's quite possible that 20 years from now, you won't have one. Where are things going to go? When Ford mentioned that, when they make one part to go in a truck, they have to make 500 to spread around the world. But it's even, for those folks, what are we going to have to do to retrain ourselves? And for them, first time they saw a 3D printed part. So, yeah, looking forward to see how this spreads out throughout the community.
Nick said in
Looks
the
like
chat,
we have a new guest here.
Oh, yeah, we do.
How are you this evening, sir? Real talkative tonight. Was there something you want to add here? I assume there's I assume because you're very much an educator and approaching 3D printing from that side of things. And if no one's seen it, your snap circuits were actually something I discussed with the director of the library as well, because I think it's cool to potentially have them in a position where they can supply themselves with some of their own educational accessories and things that they can use in-house and make in-house. And I think the entire production to use pipeline is going to be incredibly valuable for them from an educational perspective.
Who was that to? Was that to me?
Oh yeah. Well, it was kind of yeah.
I'm sorry. I screwed up. I had two windows playing. I had two different things going on at the same time. I could only hear about a third of what you said. I apologize for coming in late and then screwing everything up.
Oh, it's not an issue. No, I was just saying that I actually mentioned your snap circuits to the director of the library as something they could potentially make with their printer and use as an educational resource. And she was definitely excited by the possibility of something like that.
Oh yeah, it's first of all, it's not mine. I just I've used them, but I recommend it over Arduino or anything like that because it teaches core electronics and it's easy for the kids. They can snap things together and follow the pictures and build something. But what they're actually learning is fundamental electronics, and they don't even realize it at first. And
yeah, it's the snap circuits. Like I said a couple weeks ago, we were talking about them. My 5-year-old came running out of her room one day and said, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, look!" Took me back, and she had a switch, a battery, and a fan from her snap circuits that I bought her at the Radio Shack that was closing. So a 5-year-old, that's something that you can take to the library and apply to a 5-year-old.
Yeah,
sorry,
and my kids love snap circuits too. They're 5 and 4 now.
5 and 4. That's great to meet you in person here.
Yeah, I know.
So cool.
I
This is
saw
really cool.
that you might be joining us, and two people, two special guests that I really admire on one live stream. Thank you for coming.
I enjoy it. Yeah, no, 5 and 4. That's interesting because there was I had a discussion back and forth on Twitter with one company who was promoting something. I won't even say their name or nothing, but they were saying Snap Circuit says it's for 8 and above. And I'm like, no, I've seen so many 5-year-olds and that play with it. They got to put a legal limit on it, I guess. But You know, a 5-year-old can learn how to do that stuff, and they're learning the basics that you connect one side of the battery and then it's got to come back to the other side of the battery and for it to work. You know, so there's some real basic things they're learning there, but it's also a lot of fun. I mean, I'll play with it sometimes and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, wait until late, I think, is selling kids short. Kids they will learn almost literally anything you take the time to teach them from a very young age.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the earlier you can catch, sorry, Chuck, the earlier you can catch their interest, the better you're going to be to hook them and keep them interested. Because like my daughter, and I know I keep talking about this video that I got to do, but that I've been working on, but the imagination that the younger they are, the imagination that they have is just amazing. Like what my 5-year-old comes up with. But then like you see as like my nieces and nephews have gotten older and their imagination has come more into what they've been told is reality. Not so much what they actually have as reality. It's, yeah, the younger you can get them hooked, the better.
But there's an aspect to it too, is there's so many people that are learning electronics as Arduino, and they think Arduino is electronics, and definitely it's part of electronics, and programming is certainly part of electronics. But what you do is outside Arduino is even more important, and how you drive a motor or read a switch or a sensor or something like that, and how do you hook that circuitry up? Well, that's actually what Snap Circuits teaches you before you've ever programmed an Arduino. And if someone has learned those fundamentals of a circuit, they're ready to jump into an Arduino and understand that, you know, what's external to that. So there's a lot to it beyond just, you know, even capturing them in that, but it is a great way to spark that initial interest. And how many kids put something together, get it to buzz, get it to spin, get it to, you know, do something crazy, and they're all excited and run and show you, look what I did, look what I did. And they actually did it. You know, they actually snapped it together and did it. Versus I've seen kids go to an Arduino, they download a file and they flash it, you know, they program it, and they did that, but they really don't know really what they did completely. And there's a little disconnect there, and that's another reason why I love Snap Circuits. It's for that reason.
It's unfortunately, with the increased accessibility of things today, it's actually really easy to do things without learning anything. I remember when I first got into programming, I used a lot of like modules and stuff, and I spent a lot of time creating things without learning anything. Like if I actually had to fix a problem that had any level of complication, like with the way things interacted and stuff. But then, like you're saying, Chep, like as a kid, I had an erector set of all things from like the 1940s, I think, that was my grandfather's when he was a kid. And man, when you learn basic like logic that's involved like with circuitry and stuff that you're talking about, man, that has so much power moving forward, because you have an actual foundation to build everything off of then, instead of kind of, you know, it's almost like building a building without having a foundation there. It's like the first problem you run into, you don't really know how to fix it or the right way to approach it or learn what you might need to learn, because you don't have that fundamental understanding of like what's actually going on here. And I think it's incredibly important to teach kids that. Plus, like you said, it's fun. I mean, that's almost reason enough, because you can sit down and have fun with kids doing that kind of thing.
Also, if you learn those basics in Tinkercad, if you actually go through a lot of those experiments, and they got that one like 750 experiments, it's, you know, it's a huge kit, and I think it's still under $100. But if you go through those, when you're done, you really understand a 3D printer in many, many ways. You've driven a motor, which, you know, it's a stepper motor versus maybe a DC motor, but still you've driven a motor. You've got stop switches. You've done some switches. You've got, you know, a heater element, but it's really, that's just kind of a PWM, and then there's some circuitry in there. Same at the hot end. The circuitry outside the Arduino and that control circuit, you know, the drivers for the steppers, is really basic circuitry. And a lot of that is in Snap Circuits. It really is. So it'll help you fix your 3D printer in the end, is what it comes down to.
In my own journey learning electronics, it was powerful for me to understand that even when I was using like integrated circuits and things and making more complicated things, that ultimately all of these more complex elements we're doing were a bunch of the more simple functions in ways that are a little more, you know, easy to integrate into circuits than doing it all yourself and having a million little connections and things. And it's like you said PWM, like pulse width modulation. Man, when you understand a basic concept like that, you just see it everywhere. Like you start to see that like so many things are just these really basic building blocks that are you know, compounded on top of each other into these little, you know, microscopic little units that you can then utilize to do things that are really, really complicated, even though it's built out of like a million really simple little pieces.
They're building blocks. I mean, you guys were talking about Tinkercad earlier, and I made a comment that I agree with you. That's those Tinkercad. I think you're saying 95%. I think it was mentioned designs were done. That's what I love about it. It's just blocks put together that eventually form this really complex shape, but then anyone can do it. Well, now they've incorporated, you know, the Circuit IO stuff, the 123D CAD, and it's, to me, I've already done one video on it. I plan to do a whole lot more, but it's so exciting to me that those two have come together, and that you've got Arduino that you can simulate, and little, you know, LED circuits and motors that they've got their circuits in Tinkercad that you can now bring in it as a block and put a hole in what other object, and now you can light it with these simple components. And that's just the start of what potentially could be coming in Tinkercad with the Circuits IO, all in one cloud application that kids could be easily trained to use in schools and grow with. You know, until eventually, yeah, you want to do the Fusion 360 like everyone tells me I should switch to every time I show Tinkercad. But that's the idea, is that, you know, here's the kids, if you learn this tool, it'll grow with you, at least to a point, until you outgrow it. But it just keeps getting better. To me, I'm excited about it. It's really a fun tool, and I'm gonna keep using it. I'm gonna keep encouraging it for the audience
until the wheels come off.
Exactly.
Well, that usability is certainly a big theme at ISTE. All of the vendors were showing things, and really they're getting the software and hardware connected in great ways now. And so, you know, everyone's doing Tinkercad. Is doing Tinkercad integration. All the 3D printer companies, that's their big spiel. But I was at the Microsoft Make Code, and now, you know, Chromebooks and being able to program the Circuit Playground Express, the microbits, the SparkFun Inventor's Kit through a Chromebook web interface directly to the devices, and then being able to model. So you have the whole kit and caboodle, right? You can design something in Tinkercad. You can play around with the electronics. You can do the programming easily in the browser. And so with 3D Printer OS, you can use the Chromebook to send your STL files to the printer. It's beginning to be really accessible to use these really cheap devices to do kind of all of these maker activities that that before you had to really be a real expert to know how to do. And so that's great to see the modeling, electronics, and programming all integrated together. And then that's really what's going to let kids make real things that are really exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy I mean, think of, man, like 10 years ago, even having access to an entire creation suite like that, it was almost unfathomable unless you had a bunch of like really high-end, very inaccessible to the average person like type of software. So it's kind of amazing that things have come that far.
One change I've noticed is with 3D printing, the interest has gone back to the design and the 3D modeling. It's been there for people who want to play games, learn, okay, I want to become a gamer. I'm going to learn 3D design so I can create my creatures for games. But you get a whole new audience when you go, here's an object. Yes, it's a spinner, but it's what I have on hand. Here's a physical object with bearings on it. It moves, everything else. You get people going, you can actually design these? Yes. Now you can go into the package. You're not making a gaming character. You're making something that you'll later take that file and turn it into a physical object that you will use. And as I said before, when it was, I can't see the end result of this other than I'm going to play a game. And I started in 3D about 1990. So people, they saw it on the movies, commercials, and then to the computer games. But to be able to get a physical object out of it, that's created a whole new level of excitement.
There is before it gets too far down here. There was an absolutely fantastic and relevant question. Let me find it here. Robert Hupp asked, how do we do this without becoming the library's unpaid tech support? We need a method to train staff to manage and do basic troubleshooting for any of these machines. And I think that is, there's definitely a line to be drawn. Like personally, I have, just because of my kind of unique living circumstances and stuff, I have not literally unlimited, but nearly unlimited time and will, to help them through any issues they potentially have. And it helps they're in very close proximity to me. But I understand that there's probably people that want to help start programs in their local area that probably don't have that situation. And even myself, like, I don't want to put myself in a position where, because I'm willing to help, I end up doing, you know what I mean? I end up helping them to the point where they're not learning to do it themselves. It makes me think of my 3-year-old daughter. I recently was watching a psychology lecture, and the guy, and I totally agree, was, your child is right about everything until they're 9 months old. And then after about the age of 9 months, your goal as a parent is to do as little for them as you possibly can, and to have them do as much for themselves as they possibly can, so they become competent, confident little human beings. And like, I agree wholeheartedly, because I know that sounds harsher than it was really meant, but
well, I know our library here and other libraries I've been involved with in the other provinces, they rely heavily on volunteers, and they're very good at working with that. Volunteers make up a big part of the library. This is all smaller communities. So, for example, the Saturdays where I'm going to have my printer there, the reason we're picking Saturdays, it's their Tech Saturday. They bring in extra volunteers on that day to help people with technology. So volunteers are part of the library makeup, at least in smaller communities. I don't know what it would be like in a big city if they rely on it that much.
I also think you got to realize that there are some hard stops and some soft stops. So a hard stop is when I gave a 3D printer to somebody and they ripped out the micro USB port on the printer bot like the first week, and they couldn't figure out why it didn't work. Like, that's a hard stop. There's nothing they're going to be able to do to fix that. So I took it from them and gave them and swapped it out. So because I know how to do a repair board, right? And I called PrinterBot and they gave me a new board, and I'm going to swap that out for them. And then, there's the hot end was diving into the print bed, and it turns out that the Z end stop has a weak cable, and it works in one little spot, but when it comes out, it goes, and that's a hard, that's a hard fail. There's nothing that librarian or teacher is going to be able to do to fix that issue. That's a great time to come in, right? But if it's another thing about, oh, I can't re-level it, and there's a YouTube video on it, like, sometimes you have to step a little back and be a little disinterested as they go through the process, being close by but not doing it for them, because you do want them to have the confidence to do it themselves.
Well, that has to be part of our community outreach, and that's the care and feeding of your printer. And just, I think we got into that topic a few weeks ago, doing basic regular maintenance, going through it, and learning how the printer works, how to keep it clean, what to check on a regular basis, depending on how much it's being used. All that has to be part of our outreach.
See, I think my personal opinion on that part of it, as far as like the general maintenance of the equipment, that's something that we should be teaching them how to do. Going around and checking the screws to make sure the screws are still tight, so that somebody doesn't walk off with a print that now has a rattle because they printed it in vase mode and part of the printer's now inside of their print and nobody knows it, like Jolt did. I think teaching the general maintenance of the printer is something that we should push that knowledge onto the people who are always going to be there, rather than have them rely on us to come in and do that maintenance type of stuff. Even like unclogging a nozzle to some extent, I think we should impart the knowledge on them on how to at least attempt to unclog the nozzle, rather than somebody said it a little bit ago, you kind of got to disconnect a little bit and stay back. Let them try to figure it out. The best way the best way they're going to learn is to be hands-on with it a little bit. Doing the general maintenance of the printer, I think, is the best way for them to become comfortable with the printer, is to work around it on a regular basis like that.
I mean, I could foresee part of our role in, engaging our local communities also be sort of curating resources for them, because there's a lot of things on the internet where you might I could just picture this already, like say they call you with a nozzle jam and you've helped them with basic orientation and stuff, and you say look that up on YouTube, and they look up and end up finding a resource that actually is probably not the best way to go about it. So I could definitely see, and I've actually already started that, because I know the model printer they have and stuff, and I've already found some useful videos on like basic procedures and things that I've already started like curating a little collection of links to resources that I think will be useful for them at different stages of operation and stuff. So I don't know anyone's thoughts on that, but I could definitely see that being one of the roles that we play too. But it's going to take time. It's definitely going to take time.
I think you got a good point there, Noah. Having a list of videos, so to speak, pre-approved videos on the printer that they have. So I know you showed your video today, or released your video today, about your initial interaction with the library. And yeah, they have a printer that probably most of us have never heard of. So the next question is, okay, yeah, don't go just searching YouTube for a Wanhao and how to do something. You're going to find 100 videos that are just absolute junk, somebody's shaky cam videos, and then you'll find the good ones like Chuck's how to prevent the bed from grounding out type of deal. You'll find the good ones, but you got to weed through if it's a popular printer. Having a, so to speak, pre-approved list that, they call you up and say, hey, it prints fine on this side of the bed, but over here it's printing up off the bed. Okay, well, you need to re-level the bed. Well, how do I do that? Here, let me send you this link to this video that will walk you through it, whether it's your own video or just one somebody else has already done on that topic on that specific printer. I think is a good idea to already have that. We all know what some of the general and common problems are going to be. We can come up with lists of videos and resources that can walk them through it, that they can then use it as a guidance, but do some of the learning themselves at the same time.
I think getting them used to contacting the company if they have issues, I think would be another good thing. It's something I can't, because I've done kind of local computer support for a long time, and it is funny how many people that is like that's item number 1,000 on their list of like things to actually like try to fix the problem they have, is to actually just contact the support for the product that they have, because so often it's a very simple process. There, as far as like mainstream printers, I haven't heard too many horror stories, like in comparison to like electronics at large. Most companies are fairly good when it comes to support. There are a few exceptions, and I won't name any names and drag anybody through the mud, but for the vast majority of printers that I've ever seen people have problems with, most of them have pretty decent support. So I think just like getting them accustomed to solving their own problems and doing things like that would be a big part of it too. like you mentioned, bed leveling, you know, connect them with a good resource. And this is probably after you've done some hands-on instruction to actually guide them through the process initially, but you know, redirect them to a good resource to show them how to do it, and say, you know, if you go through this and you try it yourself and you still have problems, you know, contact me and I'll not full on hold your hand, but I'll guide you through the process until the point where, you know, you feel confident doing it yourself. And then if you do feel confident, try to teach someone else that you interact with, you know, around the printer, and try to get as many people as you know to learn this as you can.
Like, Vicky, do you do you work with your kids, and are they learning how to use the 3D printer, and how do you approach that with your kids?
Let's see, they do a variety of things. They tape up the bed. I'm a very minority person, which I sometimes like printing on the tape, the painter's tape. So they'll help me tape off the bed. They do the Build-Tech spatula. The older one, he likes numbers. So on the he'll watch the progress bar, and he'll, you know, like read off how long the print has to go. Oh, he'll look at my 3Ds to see, you know, how far it needs to go. They like grabbing the fail prints and using tape and glue and make new objects out of them. And sometimes they'll sit on my lap and play with Tinkercad, or sometimes, you know, last year for Valentine's Day, for my 5-year-old, we went and had made custom Valentines for all his friends. So, you know, it was open SCAD, you know, but he helped me with the variables, and we'd make it and, you know, print the Valentines out and stuff. So he knows how it works. You know, he'll when I'm at craft shows, he'll point to people. He's like, this gets really, really hot, you know, and he'll know certain things on models are delicate. So he'll be like, watch out for this railing, it's delicate, you know. So the only thing he's not good at is pricing. So he likes to price things, and it's either $100 or free. So that's the only area I think he needs to improve on.
I don't have little ones anymore,
fans. Yeah.
so I am totally disconnected. But but it's fun to watch kids.
The little one loves fans, so cooling fans are his thing. He's mostly intrigued by that. He could just sit and watch the cooling fans.
That's great.
Matt actually has young kids too.
Yeah, Dixie's. Vicky, you said about you were in the minority. I was waiting to see what your what was following that. I bought Dixie one of the 3D printing pens. We were at Micro Center. They had the XYZ brand 3D printing pen for $15 on clearance, and I got her one of those, which came with the rule she wasn't allowed to use it without close supervision. So I literally right here at the desk, I have an open area over here to my right-hand side. I pull a drawer out, I put a piece of wood down it's a sacrificial piece of wood, and she will sit there while I'm modeling and printing stuff on the printers that are right here in front of us. She will sit here and she'll play with the 3D printing pen. Granted, it's a 5-year-old, so it's sort of like coloring in the lines is still something she's learning how to do. But she will do that. She'll watch what the printers are doing, and she'll sit there. She'll just sit on my lap sometimes while I'm modeling and just watch what I'm modeling, just taking it in. And then next thing you know, you see her off in the corner here. Like, she'll see me shooting a video for YouTube or doing the streams. And next thing you know, over here in her little maker space in our office, she's over quietly shooting her own YouTube video and talking about her 3D printing pen and what she's creating with it and stuff like that. So she watches me do that stuff too. My 1-year-old, she just likes to sit on my lap and watch the printer run. It's funny because it's the exact same reaction we've all had when we first got our printer or first saw a printer. We're sitting there just watching, and that's what my 1-year-old will do. She'll just sit there and watch the printer run.
I still do that.
I do too. Jen will come down to the office and she'll go, "Are you ready to leave yet?" And I'm just sitting here intently watching the printer go.
Well, it changes when they go over 20. If I ever get her out of bed, then she's got her own system up and running. And as I said, she's been doing a lot of the practical prints around here. She has a headset mount that she put together. It's working away, and she's been doing a lot of her makeup holders and jewelry stands. So, you know, it's just different toys as they get older.
Yeah, I actually made, I had a print like save, not literally save my life, but oh man, it saved me so much time the other day. We got a big inflatable pole. It's like 15 feet by about 8 feet. And when we bought it at Walmart, I got a bike pump and I was like, yeah, this will help. Oh man, after about 100 pumps and no visible change to the pool, I was like, this is going to take my entire natural lifetime to pump this up. So I was trying to think of what to do. And, you know, of course we could go buy like a little electric pump, but I have a leaf blower, and the pool has like it has the little like blow up ports, and then it has like a little 2-inch port to quickly let the air out. And man, I came down, I was like, you know, I'm sorry. I had to tell my 3-year-old that we weren't going to be swimming within the hour like she had hoped. But I came down here and took the circular tube, my leaf blower, took some basic measurements, and made myself a little adapter where I could slide it over the output of my leaf blower and connect it to the 2-inch port of the pool. And I had the pool up. I mean, it took an hour and a half to, you know, actually print the piece. But once I had it, I had the pool up within a minute and a half, I would say. And that, I can't imagine how much time that saved me with the dinky little bike pump or bike pumper blowing it up. But man, there's things like that. I don't know what the monetary value of that was, but the quality of life improvement that provided me was significant.
Well, it's like Chuck, your video today. Yeah, I mean, you showed in your video, you know, I can go on Amazon, I can buy this for $13 and wait for it to show up, or, you know, I can have the satisfaction of, number one, I might have designed this based on somebody else's design or idea, but I designed this, or I spec this out to fit exactly in my situation. Whereas that $13 thing I can buy on Amazon and get in at the earliest a day, depending on where you live, maybe the 2-hour thing. But, you know, the satisfaction of I made this or I designed this is, I think, far outweighs that $13 price tag that you could have paid somebody else who already made it for you, type of deal. It's not always necessarily about how practical it might have been to do it, but more about the accomplishment too.
Well, and it's a lot of my prints are, I try to do practical things to show that a 3D printer is a tool, it's not a toy.
Right.
And the idea that you can customize something to exactly what you want and then have it in a couple hours. But, you know, you're talking about the inflatable. My son was going on a camping trip, and he needed to blow up his mattress that he's going to sleep on, and he couldn't find the adapter. And he's like, Dad, do you have anything, you know, that we could put in here or adapt or something? And I went to Tinkercad, and like, you know, 5 minutes I had something designed, and then I printed it in a way that it would print fast, because I said, you're only going to probably get 2 or 3 uses out of this, but it'll work. But, you know, I just measured the hole, measured the hose, and he was leaving. He's like, Dad, I'm leaving in an hour. I'm like, okay, give me 30 minutes, I'll have this. And it took, I think, 45 by the time it was done, but it fit perfectly. He was on his way, and he's like, as he's leaving, he goes, could we have done that any other way without a 3D printer? You know, and that was the message, right? And that was the message, and it felt good. It felt good because I solved the problem that quick. But you're right. It's, why buy something when you can build it and get that satisfaction?
Well, and even to the knowledge, the satisfaction and the knowledge, as you were talking about that was the other thing I thought about. You know, the knowledge of being able to make something, or putting the thought into how something's made. May not be necessarily with a 3D printer that it's made, but just the design efforts that go into it.
Exactly. And that's why I got a CNC. I love it. My X-Carve. You know, I got wood tools back here. I got a welder somewhere in the corner I use once in a while. I mean, I used to build stock cars, so I always had to make custom brackets or things like that. So I've always been a maker, but the 3D printing is just, I don't know, it's still magic to me. And that I can create this thing on my computer, and then it appears, you know, a couple hours later or several hours later, and I can use it.
Yep.
So it's
Like you said, it's another tool in your arsenal.
Yes. Or multiple tools, like I've
Yeah,
got too many of around here.
I can argue that same point.
Yeah, that's why, like, as far as like the outreach is concerned, I've never, I really haven't even devoted that much thought to it, because I'm not at all concerned about getting people interested. I think it takes almost literally zero effort. I could be printing the most mundane thing. I could be printing like my blower adapter to blow up my freaking inflatable pool. And if I'd show up somewhere with that and the machine's operating, I don't even need to speak. I could just like set it up and walk away, and people are going to be interested. They're going to want to know more. That's why, as like far as outreach is concerned, I want to, like, I don't mean to neglect that side, because I think there's interesting conversations that could be had about how to do that and garner some interest and stuff from different, especially different age groups, because different people are, you know, different things appeal to different age groups. But I've always been more concerned about like all the peripheral things, like getting places equipped and ready to, you know, start doing this themselves. So like, I want to be involved. They're going to have to push me away to a certain extent, but you know, ultimately the goal is to get them to be kind of self-sufficient and self-sustaining and be able to propagate this information and interest themselves.
Yeah, and you kind of ended up, by going to your library, walked into something that we sort of weren't necessarily talking about last week. Originally, when we started talking about the community outreach, it was just, you know, going out and starting to try to build the local community a little bit. For people who may have printers that, again, bought a printer because, you know, they found that $150 printer that they now have no clue what to do with, or they spent $1,000 on a printer and still have no idea what to do with it. Or they hit a snag. A lot of people hit a snag with stuff like this, especially the $150 printers, and say, put it over in the corner, I'll deal with it another day, and they never touch it again. It's originally, we started talking about, you know, just going out to the libraries, going out to the schools, and doing like an informational day for people to just come in and experience a printer, and ask questions. Just start the discussion and see where it goes from there. And Nilla, you get to go to your library and find out that, you know, they're working on starting their own maker space, which really kind of like blew up what you possibly could get into just starting out here.
Yeah, like mentally I pivoted like instant.
Yeah.
Like it was like instant. It was like I wasn't even really conscious of it at first, because I came home and like my goal and my goals and stuff had changed fundamentally. Because you're totally right. Like I was envisioning, you know, doing demos or something, maybe just having them give me, you know, 10 square feet of space and or just a fold up table or something, and letting me bring my stuff in and just do some demos and try to get some interest and stuff started. But yeah, I mean, it was a pleasant surprise, definitely. But it completely changed like the nature of like, well, I don't know if it changed the nature of what I wanted to do, but I had always envisioned the things that I'm going to have to be concerning myself with now, like much farther down the road. So I'm kind of happy that it's happening sooner than later, though.
One of the other things that came up in chat quite some time ago, but dealing with libraries, dealing with schools, the concern comes up about copyright. And, you know, there's wide variety dealing with the issue. But I found the libraries are actually quite good, because since the advent of various forms of digital information, it's something they've had to deal with. And just introduce them to Creative Commons, teaching people to, you know, if they're going into Thingiverse, when you download the object, read the screen. What's there? You know, because they're going to start by downloading things, but at least it is a introduction to what's going on. There's been a blow up, you know, in the last few weeks about an older topic of a company that was just taking things off of Thingiverse and remarketing those at a profit. And so just saying, well, no, it's just like going to the record industry and downloading or taking your music and just cutting your own CDs and reselling those. It's the same issue that you have to deal with there. So the libraries have dealt with this copyright issue already, but it is something to be aware of.
I think that's something we potentially should have a community hangout on as well. Like I've been part of the 3D printing community groups on like Facebook and stuff since before I owned a printer, and I have seen it's actually gotten to the point where I've tried to not participate in those conversations that crop up, because there is, for one, people get super heated super fast, and two, there is a ton of misinformation about like Creative Commons and stuff, because people have this knee-jerk kind of like moral or morality based reaction to it, when that really has nothing to do with potentially like the legal side of things. And I think that's one that we should schedule in advance so we can all make sure we understand everything before we talk about it, because I think we should do everything in our power to not spread any incorrect information about like Creative Commons and stuff. It's not that complicated, but I have seen a lot of people talk about it that kind of surprised me how little they seem to actually understand it from like a legal perspective. But I think that is something that's probably worth having a conversation about at some point. I've wanted to do a video about it for a while, but it's not that hard to kind of matter-of-factly state like the legal implications of all the different Creative Commons licenses. But people's like gut feelings about what should and shouldn't be done with various models tends to differ a bit from the actual like legal rights and stuff you have when you're like using other people's things.
It's something I have to do a lot more research on locally, because I'm in Canada, and I know a while back it came up at a political level about working with digital rights and what are some of the rules going to be. Canada deals with the United States, and we're part of the Pacific trade, and part of doing a lot of dealing with the European Union. And everybody has such different laws out there. It's just you have to take a look at what is required for your local area.
Vicky did post last week, I think it might have been Vicky, article about Creative Commons and why you went public domain with all your models.
Not all my models, just the functional ones. So there's Michael Weinberg, I think is his name. He's actually, I believe, an intellectual property lawyer that works with Shapeways, or works for Shapeways for a few years now. And he went to the Creative Commons Summit and had some blog posts on the Shapeways site regarding some of the conversations that were there. And so he's doing it very eloquently. I'm just going to paraphrase. But he was talking about how Creative Commons is coming from the photography and the art arena where things are copyrighted, and functional items, they would not be artistic. They would not be like a movie script or something that would typically be copyrighted. And so he talked about how Creative Commons in 3D printing right now, is it a legal license where, use is non-commercial use, or is it a social suggestion? And if we are starting to apply that licenses on things that it really shouldn't be applied to, so I had things marked as Creative Commons but not commercial use on functional items that would not typically be covered under copyright because it's not artistic, it's not, it's not a piece of art, then I'm diluting the legal interpretation of the license. And so that's why I went with things that are, purely functional, not really artistic at all. I went ahead and changed those to public domain, doing my little part there. I thought the article was fascinating. It was a two-part article. I'll go ahead and grab the blog links, and he can explain it much better than I did.
Yeah, that article, the first one you had posted, I got to read through most of it. I think I missed the very end of it because I got distracted with something else at work. But yeah, that was a really good article as far as the dilution of it. and marking things that shouldn't be Creative Commons, how that actually takes away from the actual Creative Commons. And down the road, if people are trying to defend this stuff, you're going to have cases where something is not really Creative Commons. So Creative Commons, the suit laws falls through and they lose. But then something later on that would actually fall in Creative Commons now loses its trial or doesn't even get to go to a trial. They have no defense because somebody else already referred to such and such a case that didn't actually apply. Like, it starts to muddy the waters, really.
Was that, I never actually looked at it. Was it because of some of the unfortunate repercussions of having a precedence-based legal system? I know I've dealt with that in other communities, not like 3D printing, but I don't know if that was what it was about. I was just asking. I
don't think I can speak on that. I think it arose from we're using Creative Commons licensing, which is typically for art forms, photography, and scripts and stuff like that in the past.
Well, I know there's a lot of discussion. There's a whole hardware branch of this for electronics, and there's groups that get together and discuss this. It goes pretty deep. With when I started electronics many years ago, we all shared everything. We shared our schematics, and there was really no software then, but we shared our schematics. We shared the board layout, so you could go build your own, and people would do it. And there was just really kind of a respect that you would give reference to the person who created it. And you wouldn't necessarily sell. You could sell a few, sell it to your friends or whatever, because you did the work. But it was not a big deal. But now that the e-commerce is out there, what makes it so easy to sell things, that's created a whole wrench in it. But I have several functional designs that I put out under that Creative Commons non-commercial, and I'm probably diluting that, like you said, Vicky, and it's probably wrong that I'm doing that. But what I found, if there's something that I really don't want people, that I'm going to plan on selling, and I don't want to compete against my own design, that's what I've had a few designs where people have taken my design, sold it on Etsy or eBay against me, put it 50 cents less than what I was selling it, and now I'm competing against my own design, and it's hard to get that taken down. You can, but it takes time. So now I just don't put it up. I don't share it.
I would say a vast majority of my work is not on Thingiverse for similar reasons, and also sometimes laziness and time. But Matt reached out to me. I mean, I'm still happy to share most of my models. I had a bow tie, and Matt reached out to me. That's how I met him. Was he wanted the bow tie model? So I'm still happy to share.
Oh, I'll share with somebody. I've shared with people. Say, yeah, go ahead and print it. If it's something that's useful or whatever, certainly go use it. In fact, I don't even care if they sell a few, make a few bucks, get their money back or whatever. It's when they deliberately, don't, they go on there and they're selling them 50 cents less than you. Their whole goal is just to sell. Then okay, that's a different story. Yeah, exactly. So at that point, I'm pulling the rug out from under you. But it's just such a big hassle that I just don't list it. So now, you got to ask me or know about it. So.
And then sometimes you get to be good friends and you hang out every other Friday night together.
Well, at the end of the day, right, it's a community. That's what we're putting them up on Thingiverse to share. That's what the whole thing is. There's a few, and it's really just a few bad apples, really, that come in, and then try and sue and counter sue and all that other crap that's been going on. But it's just it's really just a few of those people. But for the most part, everyone shares alike, and it gets along great. So it's so unfortunately we shouldn't need the Creative Commons and all that. But yeah, I'm going to go back and look at it now, Vicky. That's because I'm clearly not following the proper rules on some of my files. There's no doubt.
Well, I think too, Chuck, you said about like there's things you don't share now because of somebody taking your design and literally going directly after you to compete with you selling something that you're already marketing for slightly less. The thing that like ultimately really sucks about that is now you as a creator could have something that you're designing could help me out in the future. I may not necessarily buy it from you, but knowing how to do it and make one for myself, one, the end user ends up losing out in the education that they could have gotten, because now you've kind of had to take a step back and say, you know what, you have to know about this, and you have to know to come ask me for it, because most people are probably going to be too intimidated to say, oh, Chuck's not going to, if I email him, it's just going to get lost in the mess of emails he gets. Most likely is what a lot of people are going to look at. So that's the thing that really sucks, is you have your designers and your creators who now are holding back their design because they're worried that it's going to be used more or less to compete against them.
Yeah, that sucks for everybody, because when there's someone who has something to contribute, that's why you pay them. Generally, it's usually like a self-serving thing. Like you pay them to keep them contributing like useful things, and it's like that. As soon as there's competition and it kind of like makes people not share their stuff as much, it really just sucks for everybody, including the person that's taking advantage of them in the long run, because even they are not going to have access to cool things anymore. It just I actually just was cleaning this up. This was off the A8, and this one's a little rough because of the support material, but like talking about people who contribute things to the community for free. This is his name's Duncan Lucca, and he has a Gumroad. I printed this earlier, and this thing just makes me freaking smile every time I look at it. But this is he's about 30 files on there, and the quality of them is just amazing. Because like this is the female demon bust, and I printed a little small because I'm still trying to dial in support material. But I got this guy dialed in pretty well. This is like a Beastman bust kind of thing, and like the fact that somebody would sculpt this and just like give it away for free is like amazing to me. And like his files are free on his site. It's you can pay him $0 to X dollars. I'll be honest, I got the first one for free. I just wanted to test it out and check the STL out. But man, after I printed that, I immediately went back and gave him like this one. I think I went back and just like re-downloaded the file and gave him $10 for this pair of busts, because like I said, it's ultimately self-serving usually when you want to pay people for their things, because I just want him to keep making stuff. So if I have to throw him a little bit of money to encourage him to keep like putting stuff out, I will gladly do it if he's going to give us stuff like this. I think that's important. That's important in general. Even with like software, often like people will offer it for free and accept donations and stuff. Man, support people who contribute things. It helps everybody, including yourself, if you keep these creative, productive people being creative and productive for the community.
Well, that's Patreon. I know I ask for it every video, but a lot of people have the Patreon accounts. But I've seen that do some really good for a lot of that type of creator. And the biggest one I look at is the whole with the Raspberry Pi and the Octoprint. She was being paid to do that. A company was kind of sponsoring it, and then they pulled the funding, and so she went to Patreon, and I think it's over $3,000 a month. She's getting, to support that continued effort, and everyone who uses that benefits from it. That was a great example of using the Patreon. But then there's some people, they'll give the Patreon and they say, what do I get in return? What's my reward? Well, it's really not the point, but, we'll give you something. So I'd love to see more creators like that actually be on Patreon, so I can just give them a $1 a month and just keep doing what you're doing. If more people do that, they've got a regular side income that makes it definitely worthwhile doing it, because they're putting in tons of hours. Tons of hours to do that stuff. So I love to see that and see that grow. But it's money out of your pocket, and it's hard for some people to afford that, especially when you got multiple channels. I can't support all the channels I'm trying to support. So it can get tough. But that's what I'd love to see. People like that. If I see they have a Patreon account, I try to, at least for a period of time, send them some money.
Even if it's $1, like sometimes you think, like something like this, I wish I could give him more money, because he clearly spent a ton of time like producing all the files that he put out there for everyone. But don't sell yourself short. I mean, a lot of times even $1 will help if there's enough people who can contribute $1, and that mentality kind of spreads. Often it's enough to justify, again, creative, productive people to spend more time doing these things that, you know, in the long run have huge benefits for the community at large.
I tossed up the link there. It's Gina, and I cannot pronounce her last name. She's the one that did the Octoprint, and she's supporting it through Patreon right now. So it's up in chat. We're hitting the 2-hour mark. Should we just do our regular sign off of the main topic? Because we keep on going, folks, but we try to stick to the main one for the first 2 hours.
Well, yeah. I wanted to say something because Josh did kind of leave us there. I guess he had to go do something, and I wanted to thank you again for stopping by and sharing with us. Since he did stop back, is there anything that you wanted to add to the initial conversation here before we switch gears?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity to kind of geek out with some fellow 3D printing nerds. That's not something I get to do on a day-to-day basis, and you're the folks I love, and Chup, I thank you for following me on Twitter today.
Sure.
The interesting thing about libraries is you know, librarians are people, because we're talking about librarian partnerships, is they have a lot of interest in intellectual property and copyright and that sort of thing. And so when you go into the libraries and you're talking about 3D printing, maybe you also talk about some of that intellectual property stuff and let them share some stuff about that with you, and then maybe you start a dialogue about that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of exciting when you can kind of draw from the person you're trying to teach about 3D printing, trying to draw their interest in, because I think it's the intersections of stuff and 3D printing that are super interesting, is when you get people from different worlds interested and then find out the things that they're interested in and excited about, and then you get new stuff, and that's what's exciting to me.
Quick note, Josh, if you ever want to geek out with 3D printing people again on a Friday night, we're here, I think, every other Friday night now.
Yeah, Vicky, I don't know if you saw, I sent you a message on Twitter. Do you want to forward the link to Josh on Twitter for the Google group?
I'll do it.
I couldn't send him a direct message from my account, so I figured you probably can.
See, you're not in with Josh like I am.
Yeah, I definitely got kind of hooked on the Hangouts. I think it's great. I don't get to talk to essentially anybody. I do stream and I get to connect with people there, but it's part of the reason I'm really excited to be involved with fostering a local community that might be interested in the technology and stuff, because just be more opportunity to do and talk about like something, you know, that I have a passion for and really enjoy spending time doing. So really looking forward to that. And it's funny, with a little bit of outreach, I've actually made contact with like it's not a lot, but like 3 people in my my little town that have printers. Unfortunately, none of them are actively printing, and they're all in that category that was mentioned earlier, where they see the technology, get super excited about it, buy themselves a printer, and then get frustrated into oblivion, and now it's sitting in their closet. But it's like meeting people like that is super exciting, because like the one guy, I'm in contact with him, and I'm gonna help him get his machine fixed back up, and he's gonna get back into printing and stuff. So that's exciting, and it's just little things like that make me excited to wake up every day. So I'm really looking forward to some of the opportunities that have arisen.
I appreciate all you guys coming and making these hangouts, continuing these hangouts that we started, 3 months ago, 4 months ago now. I appreciate all you guys, and we keep getting all these new faces like Josh and Chuck. This is your second time on now. I really appreciate you guys growing this hangout. As everybody else who's kind of the usuals on here, you guys know I'm big about building community, which is where this kind of came from, but then where the whole discussion of going to the libraries and community outreach in the local community, I really would like to see what kind of local community I have out there besides the makerspace that's on the other side of the river. And those guys already, they're well known. We've got a group going over there. But I'd like to see, like Nilla, like you said, the people who have printers that local to me that just don't get them out. They don't know how to use them or whatever the case might be. I want to extend a hand and say I'm here to help and bounce questions off of and get your printer running.
Like Matt, you saw where I live. I'm not in a very heavily populated area. It's definitely, it's like farm country out here. One of the guys that I made contact with that has a printer is across the freaking street from me. Like there are probably less than 50 houses within a quarter mile of me. Like I live in a really sparsely populated area. One of the guys is directly across the street. Like that blew my mind. He has a DaVinci, I think one of the DaVinci first editions, the 1.0, and he doesn't use it anymore, but they had operated a vape shop, and they bought a printer because they were interested in like creating accessories and stuff for vape pens. And I don't know much about that stuff, but they had gotten one, and same deal. They kind of used it, and it was kind of cool, but it was more of a novelty than like a workhorse for them. And I think it kind of just, before long was collecting dust. And yeah, one of the guys is directly across the street from me, like 100 feet away, and he has a printer sitting there that I'm again trying to light a fire under his ass to get interested in it again and get printing again and start making some stuff again.
That's another interesting group. Now that you mention it, I've met a couple people now who, when the first 3D desktop printers started coming out, they dived right into it, and they had so many problems that they're not using it anymore. And I've been chatting to them, showing some of the stuff I'm printing and how it's going, and they're going, wow, things have changed. Let's get those folks back into it, because they jumped right in on the bleeding edge. We've talked about today how the software is getting integrated now. There's a number of packages out there. The printers themselves are getting better. The quality of the filament is improving. So it's a different hobby than it was 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm in the DC area, spoiled, and we have a National Science and Engineering Festival every 2 years. And I remember like first seeing 3D printers and not being very impressed, and just like 2 years later, it was just amazing to see, like every 2 years how they improve.
Well, I think even the I focused on the sub $500 price target because I knew that's a price that a lot of people could afford if they want to get into this. And the early prints, I had the DaVinci 1.0 was my first, as you guys probably know, and I went through a lot of crap with that, but I shared all that, the videos, but I just slowly watched things get better. And fortunately I was sent printers to review, and I'd see them get better and better. Now, under $500, like that Creality CR10 just prints absolutely amazing, and prints big, it prints small. I still can't figure out how it prints as good as it does. I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's the price has come down and the quality has gone up, and it's been really interesting in the last year, 6 months to a year, how good the print quality is and things that people post on Twitter and just pictures on Instagram and stuff. I look at these prints and I go, wow, that's really well done. Then you find out they got a ANET A8 that they tweaked, and not a real expensive printer, and then I got the Prusa MK2S, and the print quality I think is amazing. It really is amazing, and that's under $1,000. So it's really come a long way. You're right, and especially in the 3 years I've been doing this whole YouTube thing and 3D printing and sharing what I've been doing, it's really changed a lot. There's no doubt about it.
You almost weren't incorrect when you said 2 months. I mean, things are advancing at such a pace that it almost is the case that you can see change in some of the communities. It's like you mentioned, this guy, this is an A8 print. I mean, it's not perfect. Mainly because I've made a point to not really upgrade that machine much. I want to get some solid hours on it before I really do some upgrades to be able to see like the before and the after. But
the layer lines are not real visible in that when you hold it up.
They're not too bad. That machine, I know it's kind of off topic, but that machine, when it gets to the higher layers, the sway in the frame does become a little bit of an issue. But overall, man, for $160 to be able to produce prints like that, I've said that numerous times. I'm glad I brought or bought an MK2 as my first printer because it's just a fantastic machine. But if I would have bought an A8 as my first printer, I would not have been disappointed. And I was really, I wouldn't have expected that coming into this. I kind of bought it because it was cheap and it would be something fun to tinker with. But no, you're right about the quality of prints. Like I can't get this to light up right, but this is a lithophane, and this was printed on the MK2, and there's a lot of dialing in. I think I printed this, or like sample lithophanes. I probably printed 20 of them, really dialing in the filament and extrusion rates and stuff. But man, the end result, I just, every time I look at this, I just end up staring at it because I can't believe that I made this. Like this looks like an injection molded part from like a really high resolution mold. And it just like blows my mind that technology has come that far since, like you guys said, like a year ago when I first started looking. Like I was just hoping to get something that wasn't super rough looking, but and the stuff that I'm able to produce for basically pennies when it's all said and done, like something like this is, you know, that's 30 cents worth of filament. That's mind-blowing to me.
Well, I was on the Make Magazine review team for a couple years, and you know, we'd do kind of blind analysis of the prints and rate them, and we saw that year over year, just the steady improvement in the quality of the prints on the test prints that we had, just kind of across the board. That was the story, is that printers are getting better and better.
That just reminded me, Vicky, Brenna and I watched your video from the beach, and you talked about the lithophane that you did, and we're going, oh, we gotta wait till she does a video on how she does that, because Brenna has a few ideas if she ever gets out of bed.
Okay.
Well, it's, I mean, even like this printer, the Super Mario lamp, you know, and I printed the shade all on a CR10, and you know, I wouldn't say it's a perfect print, but this is at a 0.3 layer height, and it's so good, so much better than I would have been able to do on any other printer. And then the fact that it's so big, I couldn't do this on any other printer. And then the layering, like, you know, what Vicky's done this many times, but I just, you know, did the different layers, and people see it and they look at it and they go, wow, is that smooth? How did you print that? You know, and you know, up close they're looking at it, and I'm like, well, it's just on this, you know, this $350 printer I got. So I'm still amazed at the results I'm getting. And I basically took it out of the box, put it together, tightened a few things, and printed. Preston Press Reset gave me his S3D profile for it, so that helped. But it literally was taken out of the box, start printing, and it's been printing ever since. So it's the price too. It's not just that the quality's gotten better. The quality's gotten better as the prices come down. And now it's like, if someone says, I want to get into 3D printing, and I tell them, oh, you can do it for under $500. They're like, what? Under 500? It's like, yeah, why aren't you? I mean, literally, if you can't afford, you know, a $180 or, you know, a $200 printer to get started, but for, you know, $350, $400, you can get a really good printer that you don't have to replace. You know, if you're really interested, there's no excuse. Get into it. There's no excuses.
Yeah.
But, you know, and listening to you guys earlier about the library and all that, you've kind of inspired me a little bit. I've been going back and forth. There's a local art studio where they it's just a general like warehouse, but they do art classes, and they now are doing some maker space with kids, or just little kits and stuff. I've been debating, I've had some people interested in me doing some kind of like 3D meetup, and, you know, and help get the message out. It's going to take away time from the YouTube channel and doing stuff like that. But I think it's probably a direction I need to go, because, you know, I've done a lot on YouTube, and it's grown, but I'd really like to connect with the community locally more. And that's what I'm not getting. You know, having to put a video out every week, or a couple videos out every week, it takes away that time. But just listening to you guys, you've inspired me to maybe rethink that whole thing and get involved. So that's part of the reason why I tuned in. I wanted to hear what you guys were saying. And it's been great feedback. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
If you do pull back on the YouTube channel, don't let your subscribers know it's our fault.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't know how you guys are. It's always been like my personality. I've always been like a facilitator. I've always known that. I've known that word since I was very little. Like I get more enjoyment out of setting other people up to do things than I do actually doing them myself. And I've always been that way, and it's why I think like outreach and this sort of thing is really just going to fit me better than almost anything I could probably be doing with myself right now. And it's why I get so excited. But I've always been that way. No matter what's going on, whether a game's being played or anything's being done, I'd rather work for 6 hours and get all the stuff ready for everyone else to play a game than I would actually enjoy playing it. Like I just get so much more out of that. So it's funny to be in this position, but do it, Chep. I'm telling you, you need to go do it. I mean, there's very few things in life that are as rewarding as helping other people do things and seeing like other people kind of like get excited about things.
But
always
what can be valuable is as you work with the local community, taking that camera and turning it to other people and letting them tell their stories. And as you help them, as you assist on your local level, giving those people, showing that story and showing that viewpoint, because a lot of times what I hear is, oh, I saw this and I realized I could do it too. And so sometimes they might look at you, like sometimes I look at your video and I'm like, wow, he gets much better quality out of that cheap printer than I got out of my cheap printer. And so like, that's exciting. And so that's what I think. If you're working with local people, like what's their story? What was their problem? What was their hang up with 3D printing? And just showing that. And then other people can go, oh, I have those same fears, those same issues, similar problems. And that might be some valuable content for your channel, but also a way for those people to feel connected to the bigger 3D printing community.
That is an excellent idea that frankly I didn't think of, because in making the videos, I don't know if it always comes across, but the videos I try to do is, here's a problem, let's design a solution, and let's implement the fix. And it's a story to me. It's the way I wrote my books, the electronics books I've written. It's why I've written all my articles. It's telling that story and hopefully bringing along, and you learn something at the end and enjoyed it, hopefully. But I never thought about that as telling someone else's story, but through my lens and through my editing and deliver that message. That's a great point. Thanks. I'm going to take that.
It's certainly true. Like narratives are the lifeblood of human beings. Human beings, we live for narratives. Like it's what inspires us. It's what drives us. It's what makes us happy, is like understanding the world through narratives. And something it took me a long time to learn as a person, like growing up in a small town, I always just thought everything felt so mundane. I was so disinterested in everything. And like I'm only 30 something now, and I realize now that, and I'm not exaggerating, but literally every single person you've ever come into contact with has an interesting life. And as a young person, I didn't realize that. Like I would look at someone and be like, they work at Walmart. They just or this or that. Like nothing against people that work at Walmart, but you know what I mean? Like people that your knee-jerk reaction is to think that they're like mundane, like they don't have any interesting things going on in their life. But it is not true. It is absolutely not true. Like every person you've ever come into contact with has a life that would be interesting to you if you take the time to expose yourself to it and listen to them tell their story. And like I mean, that is like a brilliant point to make, Josh, is that and it's true of like anybody, like if we would do a demonstration of any kind, you could take any person that walked up and was standing there watching your machine print and do a couple minutes talking to them, and it would be interesting. Like I would all but guarantee it. Like their perspective coming into 3D printing is probably going to be unique. The things that are interesting about it to them are probably going to be unique, and the things that they would like imagine doing with that technology are probably going to be unique. And I think there's a lot of value for us as creators to like show people, like just show people more people, and it would be interesting, I think. And then, yeah, like adding the whole narrative element just like makes it even more interesting because human beings just like eat that stuff up.
That could be a lot of fun too. I didn't even think of that because I love the storytelling side of it, and that's a different viewpoint. I definitely am going to think that over a lot more.
And I think that's something where we're talking about libraries as a place for communities, and some of you are from smaller communities where the libraries are a big thing, and certainly even in urban centers, the libraries can be a place for communities to gather. And so, you know, building skills and offering training and the tech side of things is great, but that's also a great place to tell stories and find out what the needs of people are, and then using the technology to help address those problems and issues in your local community.
Very cool.
Honestly, it's a different topic. Just because I have her site up here, we talked about Gina, the lady behind Octoprint there. How many are using Octoprint? I'm just wondering. I've seen it come up in chat a few times.
I've got it on. I've got a Raspberry Pi mounted on the wall behind my printers. That currently is only hooked to my Delta, but it's going to get hooked to the TiVo Tarantula and the Wanhao Di3. FlashForge, that one won't handle Octoprint, or won't talk to Octoprint.
I love Octoprint, have used it, but 3D Printer OS is just rocking my world at the moment. Dremel donated a printer to my school, and they incorporate their own kind of front end, but I saw they're using the 3D Printer OS back end, and now I'm using that with PrinterBot and the Ultimaker and the MakerBot and all these printers. It shows you number of grams of material and all. It gives you like all of this data on the dashboard, and so it's very similar to Octoprint, but I've been super happy with that, and at least in a school environment.
Cool.
I've been hearing about 3D Printer OS. I just haven't had a chance to actually check it out yet.
Statistics on it are crazy.
For like a long time now, like getting an Octoprint set up. I can't tell you how many people have like given me a hard time because I haven't done that yet.
Well, you'd think I would have done it since I do all the electronics, but there's some Raspberry Pi sitting on my bench, and I have not touched it. I have not done it yet. And I do a lot of prints for other people. I do some for my son, the production type stuff. So I just pop an SD card and it's printing the same print over and over again. So I'm not going to gain a whole lot by switching the thing over, but it's on my list of things to do, but I still have not done anything with Octoprint.
I was, depending on your perspective, I was fortunate or unfortunate enough very early on to have a viewer of my stream send me a little care package, and one of the things that was in there was a Flash Air, one of the Wi-Fi enabled SD cards, and that has been just enough to keep me from pursuing the Octoprint, because it's been in my MK2 like for the last 6 months, and it's just enough to keep me from wanting to set up an Octoprint to have that Wi-Fi capability, and because it works good. It's a little, the transfer speeds are a little slow, depending on how the gods in my basement feel on any given day, but it's very functional, and it prevents the swapping all the time. Though I still have to do it on the Trinus and the A8. I still do a lot of SD swapping on them, but it's prevented me from actually taking the Octoprint plunge.
Well, I got the unit sitting here, and I was actually talking to a person out in communities about Raspberry Pis. I said, well, I got the Octoprint, I got the camera for it. I'm going to need to get a bigger cable. Turned out he bought a Pi for Octoprint, and he bought 3 cables at the same time. But this is someone who's not been using his printer a lot lately. But I got the cable now. I'm pretty much set up with everything else. So next week's project is hooking this up. And I think it's Joe Mike. I'll be watching over his videos again, since he has quite a good series on Octoprint.
Yep.
Though I'm looking forward to the day where every printer has Wi-Fi built in. It just makes life so much easier when you just turn the printer on and it's connected to the network and you don't have to worry about anything else.
It is
Yeah.
nice, but it's funny like how bad, like humans are such creatures of habit, because when I first started, I had to do the SD swapping because it's just, I didn't have any other options available. And my setup is actually clunkier than most people's setup because I have my, you know, my relatively high-end desktop here, and then I have it's always sitting here 24/7, 7 days a week plugged in. I have my laptop. So when I slice a file, I slice it on here, I transfer it to a shared folder on the laptop, and then I take my SD card to the laptop, transfer it there, and then put it in the printer. And there's just something, like, it just feels right because I did it for so long that like I had the flash drive for like 3 months before I finally set it up. And again, that took a lot of prodding from some of my regular viewers. Like, they would just ask me constantly about it. I finally set it up one day. But it's funny how I still to this day, even with the flasher, I feel more comfortable. Like, it just feels more right to slice it, move it, get on the SD card, and then like manually put it in. So I'm all for Wi-Fi, but I'm going to be a slow convert. I'm going to be the old fuddy-duddy that's still juggling 50 SD cards over here.
Wi-Fi with cloud slicing is crazy. Like, what I'd like to do right now is find someone who I trust enough and have them send prints to my printers, because you can do that with the software setup I have set up. It could be either I could give you queue rights so you can queue prints to my printer, or I can give you full rights so you could actually print directly. I mean, I love Cura and I love Simplify 3D and I love all the fiddling with the details. But when you're in the cloud and you can just upload your STL, select the printer, and then send the print, it's magic.
Josh, pretty sure Vicky's smile got bigger on her face.
Yeah. Hey, is there an API for that? I don't have Octoprint. I just use Simplify 3D. But I did get intrigued when I got the Amazon Echo, because I was thinking, oh, it'd be great to have my Alexa be able to, like, oh, Alexa, heat the bed up, that kind of thing. But I saw Octoprint had an API, and then I remembered I had 100 other things that I want to do first. So
thanks, Vicky. Now I got another Google Home video.
Yeah.
But I think someone mentioned in chat too, because I was going to say it as well. But the new printer belt, the one with the continuous printing that PrinterBot's now released, using the Polar Cloud. The more I read about it, the more I hear about it. It's got what you're asking for, I think, where you can just send it the files, it'll put it in the queue, and it'll print one at a time and different files, and you can change it. But that may be, Polar may have the answer there. And the printer belt may be the first printer with that application in it. We'll see.
I saw it. I touched it. I saw the first wrench coming off of the belt. It was awesome.
That's right. You saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was at ISTE 17.
Yeah.
Bill Steele was super excited about that. But yeah, it was funny because I had to ask him, like, what's the deal with Polar and PrinterBot? I thought you were kind of competitors. And he's like, no, we're really good at doing software, and PrinterBot's really good at doing hardware. And so it's kind of cool to see that. I'm still haven't investigated the Polar 3D software enough to see if it's as full featured, but yeah, he's definitely got some good engineering chops behind them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I actually I pulled the trigger, and I'm going to get one of those. I didn't want to. I didn't want to spend that much, but I got to do it. So it's.
Brooke's going to change it like 20 times in the next week and a half.
I know what. Well, I'm not first in the queue. I think Joel's going to get the first one, so he gets the first beta, and then as it improves, I'm further down the line. So hopefully I get a better one. But yeah, so we'll see. But I'm anxious to see that, because there's a lot of practical prints that I'd love to just continuously print, ideas that I got, and I want to try it out. So I'm going to have to sell a few printers here to pay for that one.
Yeah, that's cool though. Like we were talking earlier about the industry evolving and moving forward. It's hard to tell what the norms for 3D printing will be in 5 years. Like it's hard to imagine. Like I imagine things like that will become more common. It might even be something that you see kind of as a standard, like implemented like in a standard fashion into printers. I mean, it wouldn't be, from a technological standpoint, it wouldn't be that difficult once they've kind of like worked the kinks out of it. And I don't know if you said in chat or saw in chat, Chep, but Repcord said that you can reprioritize on the fly and stuff too. I guess he's referring to like the queue, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And stuff like that is going to, the effect that that'll have, because we all know like the amount of downtime, like even like this guy was not that long. It's like a 16-hour print or something, but he gets done, and you know the chances that 16 hours ends at a time of day where I'm right next to the printer to get him cleaned off and the next thing started is pretty slim. So yeah, I mean, just the level of productivity increase on a given machine that you'd gain out of something like that's kind of crazy to think about.
Well, I think the exciting thing about it was time to market. Like, we're not waiting a year and a half for this. Like, they just said, let's do it, and they did it. And, you know, I've been worried that when the 3D printing bubble hit and everybody in the world was trying to patent stuff, that it would kind of stall consumer 3D printing. So it's good to see something that innovative come to market right now.
Well, wasn't there some fear about that with the belt build plate kind of technology? I remember when, I guess it's been a little while ago, but I remember when some companies had some prototypes, they were, you know, leaking some things about that there was some fear that had actually been kind of umbrellaed under an earlier patent.
Yeah,
a few weeks ago, yes, Dustin over at Jetman, he brought that patent issue up. So I don't know what Chuck, you were going to say.
Yeah, MakerBot has the patent, or now Stratasys has the patent, and the way they got around it was, I guess in the patent it was for straight up printing. So the fact that they angle the nozzle is not covered in the detail of the patent. At least that's what I've been told. So that's why they're able to sell a machine like that, like Black Belt. That's how Black Belt's doing it, and now PrinterBot. So, but that's why I kind of jumped on it too. Is like, this is a Kickstarter that's already like being shipped, you know. So I'm like, okay, it's still an early bird. There's going to be bugs. I'm fortunately in a position. I've met Brooke. I can talk to Brooke and say, hey, you know, can you help me fix this? And so I'm willing to, you know, take that risk. But that's what I did like about it, where, you know, the Black Belt, you're going to spend a lot of money, and I don't know how long before that's even going to come out. So this was a great opportunity to get one of these printers early on and try. I wasn't going to do it, and actually I talked to Joel, and he gave me some good tips. And I says, you know what? Finally, I just said I'm going to bite the bullet and get it. I'm further down the line, but yeah, that could still raise its ugly head. The patent, you know, you get lawyers involved. Who knows? You know, it could raise its ugly head, and then they can't sell them anymore. And even more reason why I want one. You know, get it before the lawyers get it.
You can't.
Exactly.
But that's I know they're like a necessary evil, like the whole patent culture and stuff, and especially the United States kind of sucks, depending on which side of it you're on. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully they get to contribute to the tech without being interfered with too much, or even if they go to court, sometimes the cost can be astronomical to defend patent claims. But I just remember reading about that. It might have actually been in Jatman streams. I don't think it was. I think I remember somebody did some articles about that initially when the like I said, those first leaks were coming out where people were excited about the tech, and then I don't know whoever found the initial patent. It might have been them that made some press releases about it, but I just remembered that. So yeah, hopefully at least some of you get your units quick, because those are the kind of things that I love watching content about stuff like that, things that I'll probably never have, but get to live vicariously through some of you guys who get to get your hands on it, which is always pretty sweet.
Well, Bill still seems to think that there's prior art for it. Andreas Bastian in 2014 did the LUM printer, so they're feeling pretty secure that they have the intellectual rights to be able to do that without stepping on anybody's patent.
Very cool. Anybody have any cool projects they're working on? What about you, Josh? What do you do? I know you linked your, or I think it was Vicky that linked those. The lithophane capsules. Those were pretty sweet. You got anything else cool going on? Because I know everybody I talk to with a 3D printer always is doing different things than I am with it.
Well, one of the things that I'm trying to do is enable. I have this Zero Things project, and it involves, having students and teachers and educators look at Thingiverse and finding things where there's zero things for. A lot of those things are around identity, heritage, and culture. I'm really interested in makers of color, and so like I tell this story about like looking for something to print for Martin Luther King Day, and like finding zero things, and then like going and making a lithophane, and going into the SketchUp warehouse and finding a Martin Luther King memorial, and turning that into an STL and putting that up. And that for Hispanic heritage and women's history, and like there's all of these things that there's just zero things for. And then that provides a great opportunity for students to contribute and design something, because the floor is pretty low when there's zero things for a particular topic. That anything that you creates value there. And certainly working with libraries and talking about local history, and like, hey, there's this monument or this area that's famous in our region, and is there anything on Thingiverse about that? Is there looking at the local memorials and historic sites and saying, well, is there anything telling that story in 3D? And if not, going in and actually modeling something and creating local landmarks and buildings and scanning gravestones. Around here, there's African-American graveyards are getting bulldozed over for new construction and stuff like that, and trying to find a way to preserve those sorts of things are kind of interesting to me. And so that's something that libraries and librarians are interested in, is preserving local history and culture and stuff like that, and creating 3D representations of those things.
That's very cool. I would imagine the long-term value that imparts to anyone who participates is also significant. I mean, just as soon as you say that, like, not only is it a catchy little, was it the Zero Things project?
Yeah, that's right.
That name's fantastic. But I think encouraging people to look at things that way, even when they move outside of those things that obviously have inherent value, but looking at the world that way, of just like knowing that you have the ability to make things and going out and like trying to find little niches where there aren't anything, I think will be incredibly valuable to people, like on an individual level moving forward. So that's like, yeah, that's fantastic.
Because you go on Thingiverse and there's 2 million things, and that seems like crazy. But if you look at the whole world and all the areas of interest and things like that, 2 million is nothing. That's barely scratching the surface of what we can do. And like one of the things I ran across at ISTE was this site called I Dig Fossils. I don't know if it's .org or .com, and just what they're doing with paleontology and creating these lesson plans, like hardcore paleontology 3D prints, like, is super awesome. It's exploring evolution and climate change, like climate change from 20,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago with different ice ages, and like how that affected species and stuff like that. And what the fossil records show is pretty awesome. So it's cool when you find these like pockets of people that are interested in things, and you just find these rich wealth of 3D models that they have that you can print.
Yeah, that's cool. I would imagine that some of those people, when they go out and look, they're probably discovering opportunities for entire communities for things that don't exist, that there's probably a desire for something like that to exist, which probably helps a lot of people out in the long run. Or like, I can't tell you how many times since I've owned a 3D printer that I've just found like little communities of people that I didn't like. There are things that I didn't know I loved until I like exposed myself to them, and like you instantly like fall in love with that type of thing. Like you mentioned historical things. Like we live in a fairly old town. Our town used to be huge, like 150 years ago. It was like a huge manufacturing center, and then it kind of things changed. and like appealing to adults. There's all kinds of like historic buildings and stuff here. Like software advancing, it's kind of amazing that all of us with like smartphones with a relatively decent camera on them can do relatively decent 3D imaging with a little bit of effort with some of the software that's available. And there's so many opportunities. Like, how do you mentioned like monuments and stuff. Like, what is the general process when you find something that you want to kind of like embody in a 3D file? Like, do you use any of those utilities?
I don't have very good modeling skills, so like here's my Flexi Washington Monument, and so that's just that's just an SVG that I've altered, and I've done Flexi Empire State Building, and I've done a Flexi Martin Luther King Memorial, and so I go for low hanging fruit, but that's just because I don't have super strong modeling skills. But for instance. I printed a bust of Rosa Parks, and I did that by going to the Autodesk and finding scan data. So people have done 3D scans, but they haven't converted it to the STL. And so that's kind of a quick and easy way to do stuff. It's not SketchUp Warehouse anymore. I'm sure it's like Trimble, whatever. But there's 3D models and local landmarks and things. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to take some of that other existing data and be able to convert it into STLs that can actually be printed. And of course, I'm interested in what teachers and students might be interested in printing.
Well, what Vicky, you've done several. How do you design yours? Because they turned out really good. Didn't you have some?
Which one? My houses?
Yeah.
They're Blender. Yeah.
A Blender? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen those, and I think you've sold some, and when you've hold them up, I'm like, oh, that looks really good. Because there's some monuments of our downtown I'd love to try and build, but I look at them as far as a Tinkercad project, and I'm going, I don't know if I got time to jump into that, and I'm not very artistic either, so I tend to shy away from it. But when I see something like that, I'm always curious how you did it. So
yeah, it's mostly blocks. It's mostly cubes and then Boolean intersection for the textures. Like I have like a model of stonework, and I take a little face of the front of my building minus the windows, and I intersect them together to get the stonework just around the building, around the windows. I have a video on it.
I got it. I have not seen it. I need to go back and watch it.
And I have a blog post, so that's better for skimming.
All right, I'm gonna go back and see that.
So you just take skill and time to create your homes. I'm looking for utilities here because I don't have that much skill. Well, I do have time, but I don't have enough skill to. There's no amount of skill that I can multiply my available time by to equal some of the things that you've done. I just always wonder like how people do things.
Just started up. It's for a family. Their mother has gotten into very fancy doll houses. And she's also into antique furniture. So what they're going to be doing for me is they're going to take pictures of the antique furniture, which I will be modeling and then printing. And then the one son is very good at painting miniatures. He's going to paint them. But then they'll be able to recreate her living room as a dollhouse. But some of her furniture is the type, I know when my friend went to university, when he got back home, his desk and chairs were gone because they're now in Rutherford House in Edmonton, Alberta, which was our first premier of the province. And when they furnished the house, they took furniture from her place to do this because it was all from that period. So that's the sort of stuff we'll be modeling, and I'll have the files to use afterwards. So I can really see I'm going to be getting heavily involved in working with antiques and recreating those.
I've done, actually, my wife does miniature houses too, and I've done little pieces of furniture for her, but real simple stuff. And one tip I found is make it big. It's easier to manipulate and build, and then shrink it down when you print it, because then I can get whatever size she wants, because she's going to change it anyway. But that's what I found helped me. I made it big in Tinkercad, and then I shrunk it down. I don't know.
What are you working on, Chap, in the 3D printing front?
Oh, Jesus. Well, right now I'm reworking my whole garage. My electronics were scattered and I had everything all over the place. So I've been rebuilding. That's what I'm sitting at right now is my electronics bench. I've been rebuilding my whole electronics area, consolidating. I got, 40 years of stuff I've been collecting. And so I'm trying to get rid of it and just keep the stuff that I really want to keep. So that's where a lot of the prints have been around this bench. So that's what I'm doing. Most of my prints right now are about organizing my shop and specifically around my electronics bench. So I want to do more electronics on the channel or potentially launch a second channel that's dedicated to electronics. The YouTube algorithm is really throwing a wrench in my whole strategy. It's really frustrating for me. It's been great for other people. For me, it's been very frustrating. But that's what I'm working on. A lot of you're going to see a lot more electronics coming, and the tie-in with electronics and 3D printing together, maybe even multi-part videos where I'll do some electronics, show you how to design. I even may have some sponsors lined up for like circuit board and some other electronics, and then Filament Friday would be, the 3D prints supporting that. So that's the whole thing I'm working on right now. And I keep feeding stuff to my Patreon people, getting feedback from them and trying to figure out where to go. But that's what I'm doing. You're going to see a lot more of that. Hopefully don't lose subscribers over it, but whatever.
That's cool, man. Any electronics content you do, I will be there watching it. So I look forward to whatever decisions you end up making.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely, Chuck. You've hit one of those. You're non-removable from my favorites list at this point. Or subscriptions.
That's cool.
No matter what you do.
Thanks.
As long as you're not like Joe Mike and don't start streaming in your bathtub.
No, you don't want to see with my shirt off. Nope, ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, I've been doing the same thing. There's a couple of people in the chat there. No, not the bathtub thing.
Your basement looks a little bit different down there.
What was that?
I said your basement looks a little bit different down there. Maybe it's just the camera angle, but it looks like you've been changing some things.
Yeah, sort of. I got the little sticker wall here going. If anybody in the chat or channels want to send a sticker to me, one of these days I got to list my PO box. I'm paying for one that I don't really use, but I got a sticker wall finally going. As far as for the channel, like I started saying, my patrons on Patreon have been getting a little bit of a sneak peek here this past week of a pivot that I'm going to be doing on the channel. That's not, this one so far is not 3D printing related. It's woodworking, and we'll have some electronics involved in it that even my patrons don't know about yet. So new videos coming. The next two will not be 3D printing related at all. And Heather, I just saw in the chat, yes, I do not have your stickers yet.
It is a shame, like you mentioned, Chep. YouTube is really unforgiving. I've tried to branch out just a handful of times, and I unfortunately nobody understands the algorithms. Like we've discussed that before. There's people with like I've seen people with 30 million subs complain about the fact that they don't understand how YouTube works, like as far as like driving audiences to videos. But because it's something I've my feelings have evolved over even the little bit of time that I've been on YouTube. I love 3D printing, but I also like I've mentioned in videos before, like 3D printing is 15 to maybe 20% of my overall interest in life as far as like hobbies and making things. And it's hard sometimes to integrate those other elements in and maintain interest from people, because like you cater an audience that's so specific to like a certain type of thing, and then you try to branch out and it's like, that's not what you do. So it's tough.
Well, I just started out, so I'd appreciate any advice. That printer belt video suddenly got like 1,600 views today, so I was super excited about that. But
now you're the printer belt guy. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're the printer belt guy now.
I'm just putting up a link here, if I can type fast enough. This was done by the Game Theorist, and it's a very good look at the YouTube algorithm. It's also on our Friday Night Hangout Facebook page. but there, finally got it in there. They actually looked at the engineering documents that have been published by YouTube on their algorithms and how it's put together. So it's a fascinating watch. So have a watch there.
Yeah, the biggest thing I've found, it's what shifted is it's like a 24-hour window. They're gonna promote any video in 24 hours, and then they're gonna watch comments, they're gonna watch view time, they're gonna watch views, not so much subscribers, but in that 24 hours, if it takes off like your printer belt kind of did, they're gonna come right back and they want to promote your next video. Your next video better be good, otherwise you drop off the list. And it's really just this 24-hour moving window. And so if you make videos that you plan to like put in a playlist or a series of things that are going to be helpful down the road for people to watch, odds are they're not going to find it because it's not really being promoted anymore. It seems like, and again, I'm only speculating, but Veritaserum did a whole thing on it, and I loved his video, and he kind of did some tests and confirmed it. But it's really just this 24-hour. You got 24 hours to capture them with keywords and everything else. If you don't go viral in those 24 hours, that video's done, and then move on. So
that's kind of crazy. I hope they evolve that at some point, because it's like our community. The videos that, not all of them obviously, but a lot of the videos we make and the content in general, it's meant to have value over time. It's not like a flavor of the month, like come check it out, get your kicks, and never look at it again kind of thing. It's like there's videos like 3D printing, like Angus at Maker's Muse. There's videos of his from like a year and a half ago that I've referenced many times. Whenever something comes up that I'm working on, I'm like, how did he do that again? I need to go double check. And it's a shame that YouTube is structured the way that it is, because it doesn't really cater to communities like ours, which is kind of a shame, I think.
It's not how-to friendly, in my opinion, anymore. There's a lot of good. I watch a lot of woodworkers, and there's a lot of really good information. These guys that have done once a week type of things. They spend all week building this project and show it to you, and then they show it. And then they got 24 hours, and then you don't see it again, unless you really follow it. And I don't know. Like I said, it's just my opinion, but I'm seeing that more and more. It's really just, it's the Casey Neistat and the blog, which I love Casey. I love watching Casey now, but it's that format, and you got to be good. You got to really be good to capture that attention, and that's totally different than the way I approached YouTube when I joined. So any advice you're going to get from people that's been done on YouTube for a while, or even been on for 2 years, it's almost like don't even listen to them. Figure it out on your own, because a lot of it's not going to apply. And so that's all I can tell you.
Chuck, did you refer to Derek's video from Veritasium today? Was that the video you were talking about?
Yeah, in Twitter.
Yeah, and I ended up posting a link to his YouTube video. It is a really good video to explain what's currently going on. And basically, the way he put it is they're looking more for quantity than quality. So, like, for those of us who spend 5 hours editing a 5-minute video, that's not what YouTube's looking for anymore. They're really focusing on Lauren from Abuzz Designs. Just her video on the glitter filament was a one-shot. I'm pretty sure she said that was a one-shot take and uploaded to YouTube because she ran out of time. That's basically what they're looking for right now, is quick releases and consistent releases, which I've been trying with the blogs and stuff, but man, I've fallen so behind with work and doing HVAC. This is not the time of year to try to do a blog or a vlog.
And I can't complain too much. I mean, my daily viewing habits, it's no wonder they're shifting to that, because like when I jump on and I watch things, they tend to be channels that upload daily. A lot of it's like commentary stuff where, I mean, it's as obvious as something could be that they're not doing 20 takes and doing a bunch of editing and stuff. It's like, quick. I don't want to say anything bad about it, but it's not content that's going to be relevant to anybody ever. in a month. Less than a month. I would say even a week. Like if you don't catch that video within 24 or 48 hours of watching it, you're probably not going to go watch it because they've already got like a new video or two out. So I know my own viewing habits are like that. So it's not surprising that YouTube is catering to that kind of viewing behavior. It's just unfortunate to people who don't do that kind of content.
Well, that's their data. Their data is driving it. They got to make money. They got to get the ads. They got to go where people are watching. So you're right. I mean, a younger audience, that's what they're looking for. They want the quick, what's out there. But it's frustrating if you want to, if it wasn't like that before, and you're making these videos, and now that your growth isn't there, your videos aren't being seen. It's not necessarily about the money. It's just you put all that work in, and you want to get some feedback that people like it, and you go down that trail, and then I had the wrong keywords, or I lost people in the first 5 minutes or the first 2 minutes because I was as boring as could be, because old guy talking, I don't want to see him. So that you get some of that, but I got to adapt. Bottom line, if I want to continue on YouTube, if any of us want to continue, we got to adapt, because what he points out is the algorithm is the audience. It's really what it is, because if you give the algorithm what the algorithm wants, then you're going to grow. So you end up developing your material for the algorithm, and you don't even know what this algorithm is. So you got to keep putting stuff out there and see how it reacts, and in that 24 hours. So it changes how we approach YouTube. I don't think it helps quality wise, like you're saying. There's less editing, streaming gets bigger, like what we're doing here and that, but that's a change, and it's probably not going to go away because they're making more money. But so I just got to adapt. I can complain all I want, but the bottom line is, if I want to stay on YouTube, I got to adapt.
And very little interaction. It's something I've noticed with the people that I watch, is very, very little audience interaction, because if you're making like a video a day is obviously going to swamp you, but even like imagine 3 videos a week or 4 videos a week, the likelihood that you're going to actually engage in the comment section of all those videos is almost zero. Like, I don't know, there's not enough time in a day, to actually, and like people care about their content. You know what I mean? Like, most of the videos I've made, I've replied to like every comment, and I have a small audience, but the channels that I watch, like, there is just I don't even know if they look at their comment sections. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, just because there's really no point, because they're not going to be able to interact. If you are hitting algorithms, you're getting a ton of views. Like you said, if you're feeding the algorithm, you're going to get a ton of views, you're going to get a ton of comments, and your ability to actually filter them or even read most of them is probably going to be, zero.
Yeah, you're not gonna, and that's why I'm looking at, can I do, like, take a project and highlights, the Tinkercad portion, or the electronic circuit portion, and then eventually the 3D print portion. Can I make it interesting enough that a 3 to 5 minute little video, and do 3 of those, but they tell the whole story. Each one tells an individual story, and then as a whole, those 3 are a series that tell another story that get people to tune back in, or at least stay and watch those in the next one. That's what I'm going to try to do. I don't know how good I'll be at it, but that's my approach, and I don't even know if that'll work, because all I can do is try it and see how the algorithm responds. But
it sounds like a solid plan, honestly. Like, if that would normally be like a 20-minute video in your channel, which is like how I feel compelled to make it, because in my mind, it should be this nice little unit that could be referenced later, and people can see from beginning to end.
Yeah, and that's gone.
Apparently, but you're better off taking that and breaking it up into like 1.5-minute segments, and just release like 3 videos a day for like a week, and you'll probably get 100 times as many views as you would have if you'd released like a single 20-minute video. I mean, that's taking it to the extreme, but yeah.
But it used to be the opposite. It used to be, because they said they wanted a long watch time. They still want watch time, but they count watch time if they watch 3 videos in a row, because they click from one to the next, and each one is 5 minutes. Those total up a watch time, versus used to be make 1 10-minute video versus 2 5-minute videos, because the average watch time is going to be longer. So you're going to get ranked better. But apparently that's not the case completely anymore. I'm talking a little bit out of turn, because I really don't know what the algorithm's doing. But I've been piecing this together, and you know, I just know my growth has slowed down in the channel because the style of my videos and the setup just isn't clicking the same way it did, and I got to fix that. So
no, you're absolutely right about watch time. That watch time used to be king. It wasn't even like a retention rate. It was just like the raw watch time value in like a video used to be king. I remember a lot of people talking about that, and that was actually not that long ago. I think that was just before I started, which would be what, maybe 8 months or a year ago. That was the case. I think that's more or less how the algorithms function. So
I know a few years ago when I did my first videos, the big thing they were promoting was make it short. Go for 3 to 5 minutes. They didn't want it longer than that. And you know, that whole thing's changed quite a bit now as well.
yeah, so the message is, no matter what you decide on doing, don't get too attached to it, because there's a good probability in 6 months you're going to be doing things in a fundamentally different way.
Hey, you guys, it's 1
the
a.m.
better.
I gotta get going here pretty soon. So I just want to say thanks for letting me join. So I'm gonna tune out.
I should go to bed too.
I did not realize it was that late. I probably got to head out too.
Yeah, I know.
Fascinating discussions today.
No, thanks everybody for showing up, especially like Chep, Vicky, Josh. You know, Josh and Chep, especially, like, you guys. I really do appreciate you taking some time out of your day and coming and contributing.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Thanks.
Yeah, everybody's always invited. I think that's
Absolutely.
the basic MO of the community hangouts.
Yeah, as long as you come on and you're not in the bathtub, you're always invited on. Joe, Mike, we've given you a bye. You're allowed back.
I couldn't say no to a invite from Vicky, but I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know you guys were here. So this is awesome.
Yeah, we're trying to get the word out. I've been lazy lately, but I'm gonna try to get back in the swing of things here.
Yeah, we're looking while we're at it, and we're at the 3-hour mark. The next stream at this point will be Friday, July 14th, 10 p.m. Eastern. So anybody wants to come back. I know there was a little bit of kicking around the idea of the topic being a copyright, Creative Commons copyright licensing issues, and the current topic right now going on about people selling prints and stuff. So that may be what we're talking about. We do have the Reddit and the Facebook group. If you guys want to help give input on the topics for the 14th, jump on there and let us know.
Ooh, while we're talking about live streams, there's going to be a 3D printing ladies live stream tomorrow at noon Eastern with some of the ladies from 3D printing. Please join us.
That's being
hosted over at Apyro Designs.
Okay.
Sorry, Vicky.
I will make sure I catch that. I've yet to catch one, and I feel bad. I'm going to stop by.
Partying, so we're going to have a good time tomorrow.
Noah, do you want to give everybody a chance just to tell everybody where to find them, how they can follow if they haven't followed somebody already?
We will, but one thing first. I got my maker box today. Mentioning Heather.
Spoiler alert.
I don't know if she's aware of this, but the maker box for this month, which is, I forget what I don't know what month it is. How bad is that?
It's the June month. It's
the June box.
They're all picked by women, right?
Where am I at? Yeah, but they have the pink ABS they included, and this is inspired by the Women's History Month, obviously, but they even mentioned the #3D Pink Mafia. So, Heather.
Oh, cool.
People are aware. People know you're out there. I just thought that was cool as soon as I saw it. I don't know what I'm going to print with some pink ABS, but I'm going to print something cool.
Yeah, print something for your pig.
I know. That is in the works again. I feel like I'm spinning plates over here, and like all my plates have fallen, so I'm going to try to get them spinning again. But no, if anybody wants to like comment on anything before we close things out here, you're more than free. Remind everybody who you are, where you're at, where you can be found.
I'll do one real quick for Josh, since he did skip out. Josh is with Design Make Teach. I just posted his website in the chat On Twitter, his handle is shoot, what is his handle? Design Make Teach on Twitter as well. I wasn't sure if it was Design Make Teach or not. You guys can follow him. He's really big into education and 3D printing for sure. I'll let somebody else go.
All right, I'll go. At Chap 3D Printing, the easiest way to get me is this filmatfriday.com. Takes you right to my YouTube channel, and I'm there every Friday. So stop by, take a look. Next.
Very cool. Richard?
Well, I'm at Zadim, the Zadim channel on YouTube. Zadim.com is my website. The website takes you also over to my musical site, Songology. And I'm live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, as well as I do try to get my regular blogs out on Sundays.
And that leaves me, right?
Yep.
I'm Vicky Soma. You can find me at TGAW on Twitter. My YouTube station is TGAW3D, so TGAW3D. And I have a 3D printing blog at www.tgaw.com.
Cool.
And I'm Matt. My channel's How I Do It. Like I said, I do a lot of 3D printing, woodworking, metalworking, electronics. You guys will get to see some woodworking and some other general How I Do It stuff here coming up in the next couple of videos. And I really need to start the series How They Do It, the Makers of Makers series that I had mentioned back in January or February, where I'm going to be interviewing makers who were makers before the internet, starting out with my grandfather. Just kind of a story. Nilla, like you said, we all like narratives. That's sort of where that is going. It's talking to makers who never really had the internet to inspire them or teach them. They learned most of what they know just from experience. So I'm going to be getting started on that. Kind of put it off. The weather was crappy there for a while, so I didn't get to start recording that stuff. But that is definitely in the works right now. So that's all. And you can find us all back here again. Keep an eye on the @F3DPCH Twitter account to find out who's hosting next month's or 2 weeks from now Friday night stream. And thanks again for everybody. Thanks Nilla for hosting.
Yeah, thanks for letting me host. Especially, we got a latecomer here with Chris. I gotta show you guys though. I gotta admit, lithophanes are like my new spinner as an adult, and this is, I'm sure some of you get a kick out of this. This is the print that just finished. My camera is hating this, so I'm like trying my best. This is like
That's
like
cute.
I have been hooked on these since I got like it just kills me. Like even the Nintendo's up on my shelf, like they're it's just crazy to me. And it's like it's part of the reason I love 3D printing so much is like every couple weeks there's just something new to try out that blows my mind again, and I didn't think my mind could be blown again. That's why I just like I can't wait to like start sharing stuff with people and get other people like super psyched about making stuff all the time. But yeah, we had Chris join us here.
Yeah, Chris, you missed some good practical prints.
Did I? Yeah, I'm sorry. We're going camping this weekend for the holidays, and so I've been digging out all the camping gear out of the rafters all night.
That was actually one of the practical prints that Chuck talked about. His son was going camping and needed a part for his air mattress.
Oh, there you go. What was it, Chuck? The valve seal? For the cap?
Yeah, the adapt. He needed an adapter to go from the pump to the air mattress itself.
Oh, okay.
So I had to, and he gave me an hour to do it. So I had to do it, print it, and get it done. And I did it in 45 minutes, but it worked.
There you go.
Yep.
Perfect. What else did I miss tonight?
Missed us talking about you again.
That's expected.
One of these
Yeah,
times,
part
you're
two.
not to skip out on us, because otherwise we just talk about you.
Yeah.
Chris, I had a big inflatable pole that my daughter got, and I started blowing it up the regular way and realized it was going to take like 3 days to blow it up. So I took my blower, I have a leaf blower, and just like measured the output nozzle and made a little piece in Tinkercad to connect between the 2-inch output and the big old thing, and 45 minutes of printing, and I had a pole blown up in about a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's after the 3-hour mark. Now we're talking about blow-ups, inflatables, and blow-ups.
Pink filaments.
Chris, you're just in time.
Oh boy. Boy, I think I'm going again.
Well,
Good night, guys. I gotta go. I'll see you.
Have a good
yeah.
night.
Thanks.
Good night. Good night, Chris. Good night, everyone. Thank you for having me again.
Thanks, Vicky.
Good night, Vicky.
See you, Vicky.
Oh, so what'd you guys think of the Amazonian filament company filament?
Yeah, I saw that. I was so confused at first. You played it like so, like I don't know if deadpan's the right word, but like you didn't let on at all that you were being facetious.
I honestly, I watched your video all the way up to the end, waiting for you to pull something out from somewhere and just be like, and here it is, and actually have something real. Like I watched the whole time sitting on the edge of my seat wondering what's next.
I got about 2/3 of the way through and actually had to like go back to the beginning and rewatch it. I was like, I'm missing something here.
I left the clues at the beginning. I said, this is filament like nothing that you've ever seen. You know,
Well, you held up the empty spool, and my thought went, "Oh, he must have used it all, or must have used the whole sample."
Yeah, it took me several tries to get that without cracking up laughing. But I wish I would have had that for the 4th of July, though. Then I would have had to compete with your gnome.
There you go.
I just wanted Deacon in chat asked he needed some suggested prints for MakerBox filament. I think that's because I think several of us here have MakerBoxes.
Yeah.
I'm not the best for that because I have a huge stockpile of MakerBox samples. Some of them I've been saving because I've seen some people, they'll take like not always like a Maker coin, but they'll have like a fixed print that they tend to print. And like the few samples I've printed, I should say few, I've printed with a bunch of the samples, but I always try to like cater the prints to the filament. That's why like the pink ABS kind of threw me for a loop because I'm like, I don't know what in the hell. Because there's obviously something cool to be printed with this, but I don't know what offhand. So
Probably get a couple of fidget spinners out of that.
that's true, but it's like I don't want to do that. Like that's fine. But... Oh, I know it gets crazy. Like I loved having them, but it gets overwhelming after a while. My backlog is huge.
Ryan's My Little Pony unicorn will print out of one filament sample.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's
my daughter would dig that.
Yeah, it's a neat one. I did that earlier today, and the filament won. And then I tried it again in Rigid Ink, and it failed miserably.
Like I have that granite. It's like a really super light gray with like the darker particulate in it.
Yeah,
like I have that sitting here. I'm like dying to print with it, but I'm like, like I wish I could print this guy in it. I think that would be cool to like print a bust or something like that.
Oh yeah, I think was it Filament One printed the high five and posted that on Twitter with dual color with the Vertigo gray and gold. I think that was kind of neat for it. So yeah, the statues are great for it.
I've printed spinners already with it here and there, but as you guys saw, I collect my samples. I keep thinking like, nah, this isn't good enough to use this sample for, so I keep saving them for something really good. Besides like the Ninja Flex, and this month I'm kind of glad we got the Cheetah Flex this month, just because like I kind of wanted to compare that to TPU, TPE, Ninja Flex, which I have all those. There's been a few different filaments though that I didn't actually print the sample. Just looking at the sample itself, I've ordered the rolls of the filament so that I have it bigger to make something else with it. And then having the discount codes obviously is an advantage too.
Yeah, I haven't done too much with it. Printed a few frogs and a few other things, but some of them, same thing. It's going, oh, I want to print something special with this. You know, the marble one that was in last month's. I'm just trying to figure out which little statue I'm going to print with that one.
Yeah, my wife, May and April, she claimed 50% of my maker boxes each month. But has yet to come up with something, because now that she's stay-at-home mom, she gets the maker box. So like yesterday, my maker box showed up, and I get pictures of all the different bags of samples. And of course, the initial picture was her holding the box saying, look what showed up today.
This is,
I made the mistake of letting Brenna open up the last couple of boxes, and there was rainbow filament in the one. And I know that one just sort of, I saw it go by my face, and that's all I've seen of it as it heads to her printer. So,
Repcord asked about printing with the spools. I'm almost embarrassed to show this, but it does work quite well, and I've actually never had any problems with it. So the MK2 comes with these relatively simple pieces that are like the spool holder that go on the top, and they hold the spool, and it works okay. The first thing I ever did was three-quarter inch piece of PVC. It's cut just a hair wider than the actual spools are, and I used that for a long time, just like using spools. When I started getting these samples, I just took cardboard, cut out 2 little squares that actually fit kind of snug on my PVC piece.
Squares?
Or squares, circles. It's 1 o'clock, man. Give me a break here. And I've actually used this for every one of the samples that I've printed, and it works quite well. They're small enough that they don't really bind. Like, as long as they're, you know, relatively like coiled correctly when you put it on, I haven't had any problems with them binding, because the prints tend to never be over maybe what, like an hour or 2 at most.
Yeah.
Because given the length of the sample,
that's actually not
the best solution. But it's what I've been doing, because I know some people print out like the sample rolls, or like I have a couple empty rolls, but it's such a pain in the ass to spool them up.
Here's what I was using for a little while before I just kind of got tired of it, and I just throw the spools on. So when you buy the flexible LED strips off Amazon and eBay and stuff, they come a lot of times come on these spools.
Little skinny rolls. Yeah, that doesn't look bad.
It's real skinny. I mean, they're like a 1/2 inch, 10 millimeter, something like that, thick, but they're perfect for samples. I was using these before I ever signed up for MakerBox, when back when FoxSmart Filaments was giving away a lot of samples on the 3D printing group. They'd like once a week or once every 2 weeks or something, they'd post and say, all you got to do is email Kate at FoxSmart Filament, and they'd send you 2 samples. I was using those for those.
Hey, Matt, which hand are you holding up right now?
Left.
Your left? Your image is 180 degrees flipped.
Is my logo too?
Yeah.
Yep.
Why do you guys not tell me this at the beginning?
I didn't even notice, actually. It's funny, I looked at you that many times, I didn't actually even notice.
Well, you play with technology. Last time you had the chat in reversed, like we were looking through a glass on there. So
I thought, nobody said anything this time, so I thought, oh, I have it fixed. No.
I noticed your shirt at first because it says rats.
See, which is funny, because like when I'm looking at the stream on Hangouts, it shows it right. But when I look at it on XSplit, then it shows it in reverse. The heck? You guys let me sit here and talk.
Now you know, 3.5 hours in.
Yeah.
See, now you know who your real friends are.
I know.
We
You know who the observant ones are. Holy crap. I can't believe I didn't notice that. Because, yeah, your logo's down in the corner backwards. Oh, well.
Thanks, guys.
I'm a polite Canadian. I've been looking at that going, that's reverse, but maybe there's a reason.
But
okay,
yeah,
so how about...
I don't know where you're keeping your spool. Like, I have mine. I know it's a little tough to see, but mine is always kind of like up above the machine here. And it goes down. I've actually never had problems with those little sample rolls binding. I've had problems with the other samples binding, but not the MakerBox. Like the 250 gram rolls that I got from somewhere, I forget where, they used to bind a lot, but yeah, there we go.
See, now it says rats to me.
Well, I even commented on how different your basement looked. Now I know why you had it freaking flipped.
Yeah, everything was backwards.
There
That's
we go.
funny.
Now now your logo says Hawaii again.
There we go. I can't believe you guys.
That's funny. All right, guys. Well, I do got to go to bed. My my son's actually going to be up in about an hour and a half for his feeding. So.
Well, this was a good night. So
Yeah, it was.
So you need to be asleep before your wife. If your wife notices that you're awake, she'll make you feed him. But if you're asleep, she'll ignore you, let you sleep, and she'll take care of it. Is that how it works? Or
No, we have like we tag team it. Like she does one feeding. She does like the 4 o'clock feeding. Or well, I guess it'll be the 6 o'clock feeding today. But yeah, I usually do like the 3:30 feeding. And then she'll get it at like 6.
makes sense.
Works out. Keeps everybody happy. And I never sleep, so it doesn't really impact me all that much. I'm always like running on fumes.
Man, I'll tell you what, that's been catching up with me as of late.
I've been going about 15 years and hasn't fully caught up with me yet, so I'm a bit of an
All of a
insomniac,
sudden,
oh
Yeah,
no, I
thanks,
think
Tony.
Tina's been asleep for 10 hours now, so I'll have to go wake her up.
I have friends like that. I couldn't sleep for 10 hours if I wanted to, and I don't want to, but even if I wanted to, I couldn't. My one friend has slept for like 14 hours on a regular basis, and it's like, I can't. Your body's different than mine. I don't understand how that works. Like, that's so crazy to me. I sleep for 4 hours and wake up like I've been hibernating all winter.
Okay, well, have a good night, all. We'll see you in 2 weeks, and we'll see the chat on Facebook, see what happens there.
Yeah, everybody. And we didn't really mention this, which is kind of dumb, but everybody keep pushing, and we'll revisit this in a while and see where everyone's gotten. Like, I'll be doing videos, like periodic updates on my channel, how things go, because I should have another meeting here in a week or so. So it might just be to talk. It might be to actually do some training and stuff. So I'll be interested to get some feedback and see what everybody else is up to.
I'll get Brenda to follow me with the camera on Friday with this mobile maker. Maybe I can get some video out of there.
It'd be cool. Yeah, because it's still all alien to me, so I'm interested to get everyone's input.
I guess I'll get to learn from y'all's mistakes, because it's probably going to be mid to late summer before I get a chance to engage anything.
I think there's some benefit to that. Like, I wish I knew more going into this than I do, because it's kind of unsettling not knowing how things are going to go or what I should do exactly. So it might be better in the long run for you. Like you said, you can watch us make all these mistakes and then profit from them.
That's my slogan for my channel. I screw up, so you don't have to.
There you go. Yeah. Also hoping, though, since I'm so close to Matter Hackers, I'm hoping I can, and they have a lot of programs in place, so I'm hoping I can engage with them to work through the community that way. I know Mara does a lot of local school visits and stuff, and I'd like to talk to them more once things slow down a bit.
That's cool. That's cool they do that. That's why I want to try to get that to be the norm here in our area, because there's basically nothing like that goes on, which is kind of a shame. Kids are just like falling through the cracks with technology here.
Next one. Sorry. Any idea for a host for the next one?
We haven't had anybody yet.
Right.
TBD.
Yeah, to be determined, I guess.
All right.
Yeah, we were talking about the libraries and stuff and seeing how things go. I figured, we've got Printed Solid out here. They're pretty big into going around to the schools and stuff. And see how things go. Like I said, my first initial attempt with this library is just to do an informational thing. Get people in, get people talking about it. I'm kind of glad that's like the only approach that I've had. But to show some kind of insight on how I've got a little bit of an upward battle, I think, because when I asked the head librarian for her email address to be able to communicate that way, she goes, "Oh, I don't use email. You're better off to call me." I'm like, Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Like, this is the battle I'm gonna have to deal with right off the bat.
Yeah, step one is getting her an email.
Yeah.
Probably we're not expecting that.
Yeah, I really was not expecting that response from her. But we'll see. We'll see how it all goes.
That's what I said. Luckily, the lady I'll be dealing with at the library is pretty tech savvy. She doesn't know anything about 3D printing, but I think I'm going to be able to send her some PDFs and links to YouTube videos, and she won't have any problem watching them. So I do have that going for me.
Okay, I'm off. Have a good night, all.
See you, Richard.
Yeah, I'm going to hit the road too, guys. Chris, next time you got to join us earlier.
Yeah, I wish I could have. I'm sorry I missed it. At least wanted to jump in and say hello. But if I don't talk to anybody, have a great 4th of July, great Independence Day. Try not to make it too hard. I mean, work too hard.
Did you have any thoughts on the topic for tonight before we parted ways?
Nothing that I'm really ready to share. I honestly, I've been really slammed with the day job. Like I said, I probably will be through mid to late summer. We've got a couple of large rewrites that we're doing for taking over for a customer that went out of business. And we're doing a couple of large projects for, let's say, Major League Basketball associations or teams that I can't specifically talk about on the air. But we have a couple of really large projects there. So we are going to be really tied up through probably mid to late August, if not later. So I haven't had a lot of time to put much thought to it, other than really wanting to find out what Matter Hackers is doing. And not to say I want to leech off of their efforts in this area, but if they already have something going in Southern California, it makes sense to work off of what they've already established, or try to assist in any way with what they've already established, instead of trying to start an outreach.
Oh no, I agree. Yeah, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel if you've got a dealer right down the road.
Absolutely.
But no, I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Said learn from your guys' mistakes. I mean, it's definitely a good thing, and I think that's what we're all here for, is to help spread the word, and to help teach. I mean, that's the driving factor for almost all of us, that we're doing what we're doing here on YouTube so that other people can, as Richard said, learn from our mistakes. And we want to help people be better makers. So it makes sense for all of us to be involved in the community as much as we can, in any facility, in any capacity.
Yeah, why just hurt and burn myself on YouTube when I can go do it in front of a live audience of middle and high school kids?
Exactly. Speaking of which, Nella, you look like you have like a little blemish there. Did you do it again?
No, yeah. It's never ending. It's the problem with having no hair is you have no protection. I need to wear a helmet all the time.
Print yourself a hard hat.
I need to. I was just telling my daughter today that I was going to print her a helmet because she falls down all the time and hits her head.
Print a bald cap hard hat.
Yeah, that wouldn't be creepy at all.
All right,
I have to like put scars on it for her so she doesn't have to get her own.
There you go.
But yeah,
I'll catch you later. Have a good weekend. Have a good 4th of July, and I'll see you guys around on the internet.
Yep. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chris. Thanks to everybody in chat. If you don't mind, hit the like button on the way out. It does help with the algorithms that we were talking about. Like I hate that's the case, but we'll get the word out here about the community hangouts and stuff. And you see the hashtag in the video title. If you want to check out Twitter so you can follow things and see who's going to be hosting next time and stuff, be sure to do that. But yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out. Good conversation, good company. Love it. Go print some stuff and then go to bed.
Yeah.
See you, everybody.
See you guys.